Not yet, but I have to try it a few times. Then I can.
Good evening. Excuse me. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, September 10th, 2014 to order. Can we have a roll call, please, Mrs. Schlueter?
Yes, Mr. Alexandrovich?
Here.
Mrs. Evans?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mrs. Larson? Here. Mr. Nielsen?
Here.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Here.
And I'm here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Pats?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on the agenda is community comment. For board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of resident comment. Would anyone like to make a comment? Please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Burton Davis. I live in Franklin on Virginia Circle. Do you need the actual address?
Yes, your home address.
12374 West Virginia Circle, Unit 3.
Thank you.
I can see the mosquito sign from my house, so it's like way out. I have a concern I'd like to share with the board, something I think is fixable and addressable, and probably not even without significant cost. This is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And this is the size of the desk or writing surface on roughly 20% of the desks in the new addition, the new wing of the high school. I personally would not consider that an adequate work surface. Looking at the size of the laptops and seeing the Chromebooks that the students have, it barely fits on here. I'm not sure how students can be expected to adequately take notes and perform in class. Although the chairs are comfortable, they're cushioned armchairs, they're very comfortable. From an educational standpoint, I would find this writing surface, this work surface, to be inadequate. Given the newness of these chairs, I would think, and presumably given the cost of these chairs, I would think that replacing these chairs or exchanging these chairs could be done relatively inexpensively, perhaps even at no cost, given that they're undoubtedly more expensive than alternative, more standard desks that are used at the high school. Questions, comments?
This is not an agenda item, so we can't address it tonight, but we'll take your input, and I think Dr. Pats would look into it for you and get back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. School board announcements. Do we have any announcements?
Just want to share that the foundation is sponsoring their big event. It's a beer tasting on Friday, October 17th. You're all welcome to attend, and it's a big event. So mark your calendars. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
I had a meeting with Mr. Feckler, the liaison assignment that I have fits my school this year. And so we went over some of the events that he has planned and trying to get out to his school a couple times this year. And we met at Starbucks in the morning and had a good chat, and it was good. So
Great.
I encourage you all to reach out to your school and let's begin the year and get things started.
Anyone else?
Well, I attended back to school night last night at the high school, and I'd just like to say it was fantastic. There was an energy in the air there, and there were smiles on every parent that I saw, and there was so much talk about, you know, the way that auditorium looked and all of the new rooms, the classrooms, and all of the new things that were in those classrooms. So it was very exciting. There was not, I don't know, a disparaging word to be heard, but it was fantastic. It really was very heartwarming.
Thank you. I have an announcement, just a reminder that the WASB Fall Regional Meeting in Pewaukee is Thursday, September 18th at 6:00 p.m. If you haven't signed up and still want to, I believe, Megan, the last day to sign up is Monday. Is that correct?
I
Okay. And Dr. Pats, there was a question about riding in a van for anyone that wants to.
Yeah, none of our vans are available, so we can we can meet here, and then we can decide if we want to drive together. It's at, I would say if we met here at about 5:30 would probably be good. What time does it start? 7?
It starts at 6.
6? I would say 5 o'clock maybe, just because we're going to get ideal traffic conditions, so.
So do you want us to just email you if we want to do that?
Yeah, if you want to drive by yourself, why don't you all just email me and tell me if you want to drive by yourself, or if you want to meet here, or if you're, and I'll take it from there and arrange something.
Okay, thank you. And then I am the liaison at the high school, and I had a meeting with Mr. Nowak, and I visited a couple of the new classrooms as they were in action, and I was really impressed with those. Also visited the pool area, because I had not seen that as it was completed, and it's very bright and great looking, and that'll be exciting. And I was also impressed by the painted walls that are painted with idea paint, even in the hallways, so that they're like smart boards. So it's just a great way to have a new learning tool. And we also discussed looking into the possibility of student government coming back to our meetings, if they wanted to come and have face-to-face time with us. Mr. Nowak said he would look into that with Mr. Decker. And he also shared with me that Inroads has used the Sabre Center for a seminar, so it's being used during the day, so it's nice to get the use of the venue during the day by the students. I've given Mr. Nowak a couple business contacts for partnerships, and he did go on a tour of one of them, and so something might work out that way. And I did have a conversation with the student resources officer the first week of school, and he was really happy that week that things were going well. Any other announcements?
I also was able to attend the Meet the Teacher Night at Southwood Glen, because that's my liaison. And it was just kind of a, parents came, and I did chat with Ms. Cody, but it seemed to be a good start. And I think there was, I do recall, and I don't have it in front of me, there was a communication reaching out to parents, I think, more in scheduling, and trying to be more in contact with the school, because it's easier to do that. And I think there was the communication to have what I thought was a pretty good quote from you, Steve, but I don't remember what it was, but I do remember it was important, and I'll share that with you later.
Thank you. School board calendar. Regular board meeting on Wednesday, September 24th, 2014, here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m. Regular board meeting Wednesday, October 8th, here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 7, liaison reports. We have the personnel and policy, Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you. There are 3 reports, 3 policies coming before the board tonight. Actually, 4 documents, if you include the policy update schedule. The Sabre Center for the Performing Arts Facility Use Policy, the Facility Use Policy, those got separated out. And then the contracted staff termination of employment policy. So I would actually like to start in reverse order with the contracted staff termination of employment policy, unless you wanted to go over the schedule first, Judy. Did you have any preference on that?
It's your choice, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, maybe we'll start with the schedule, the overview. Does anyone have any questions or additions with the way the schedule was put together? Did everyone get that? I know. Okay. Is there anything particular you wanted me to go over on this, or just kind of leave it?
What's the added policy work category? The bottom, how is that different than?
Those are policies that we aren't revising because of age or because they're new. They're things that just have come up more recently that we need to address. So they're added to the schedule. it happens every year that there's some new legislation or there's something that's changed that we have to add policy. So those are added policies from the original plan. So this is a very fluid document in that regard. And sometimes we don't get through, most times we don't get through all of it because we end up adding a number of policies that we are more immediate.
I guess, I see we have youth options, that's the first item on there, and I know we have an item on our agenda tonight. What are, is this legislative related? that-
Correct, it is. Yeah, there's new legislation with regard to course options, meaning students can go into other districts and take up to 2 courses from another school district. And we have to address that in policy and add that. Course options, it's called, and it's coming very soon. Dr. DeZerk and I are working on that.
Thank you.
Okay, and this is a document that can be, we can come back to this. If anybody has any policies that they would like to have reviewed, they can be asked to be brought forward. In one of my initial meetings with Judy, it was more clear kind of how this works, and that policies that the administration wants to bring forward are put together, brought forward, we discuss them. Any policies that board member wants to review would come to the board, and we would have a discussion as to whether it would go to the administration to rework some of the language. So we can bring anything up, but whether it actually would get changed, it would need board consensus or whatever. So, all right, so that's the schedule. In looking at the contracted staff termination of employment, if we can tackle that one first, this is board policy 4221. This is an existing policy that's being updated. There's some modified language and changing some of the fees that are in here. And so, Judy, if you wanted to fill in any of the gaps there.
Looking at other districts, our fees are incredibly low compared to other districts. Staff is moving around a bit more now. Some of that may have to do with post-employment benefits changing in a number of districts. Districts not offering them at all. Various ways in which teachers are compensated now has changed quite a bit. So there is more mobility. Teachers are moving, and I wanted our liquidated damages to be comparable and meaningful. So I do recommend that we increase those dollar amounts.
When was the last time the dollar amounts were changed? I see the policy was revised in 2005. Was that to change the numbers?
I think in 2005, we added the $200 assessment for the late retirement, but even prior than that, I think that those amounts didn't change. They were in the collective bargain agreement for many years.
All right.
I'm pleased to see these changes. I think we've been really low on our fees for quite a while compared to other districts, so I'm happy to see these changes.
Well, and it puts you in quite a spot, so to put some teeth into the policy. And one of the, like for instance, for resignations submitted after signing a contract, so now you've already got someone in place, they'll know they're in place, they'll know that these provisions are in place when they sign, so, yeah, I agree.
Helps us recover some of the costs associated with replacing the person as
Right.
well,
And-
especially on short notice.
Right, and we want to hire the very best, and the best time to do that is early. So if people know that they're going to be assessed, they may resign earlier than later, which allows us to get in that candidate pool much sooner.
How often does it happen that we have early resignations?
It happens every year that someone makes a
Okay,
decision to
once,
resign.
one person a year? 5 people a year?
Resign to go work somewhere else. Is
Such that they would be, that they're
such-
assessed a
Such
fee?
that they'd be assessed.
Yeah.
I would say we have 2 to 3 a year.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion to approve board policy, the revised board policy 4221?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Abstentions? Motion carries 6-1. Thank you.
Okay, the next policy I'd like to tackle would be Board Policy 3630, the facility use policy. There's some proposed language changes in here, mostly having to deal with the addition of the Saber Center and some rate adjustments. But Judy, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. The policy itself, I believe we needed to add something to its title to make it clear to people that this policy doesn't pertain to the Saber Center for Performing Arts. So the language in the policy itself is changing, which is why I would call for a vote on this. So that I think makes it pretty clear that this is for everything but the Saber Center for Performing Arts. And then Brad Anderson's here tonight, and Mark, because they work very intimately with the use of our facility by our community and patrons. So they're here to answer any questions you have about it. But overall, I think, Mr. Nielsen, you identified that the policy's been updated to reflect some new rates. The other thing we did is we wanted to align this policy with the other policy that we've just developed for the Saber Center with regard to what we call groups, what's a nonprofit, for-profit, and we made sure that those were aligned. We added the out-of-district for-profit because the Saber Center's definitely going to get those kinds of requests, but typically we did not, but we could, so that was added to the policy. So the definitions were updated. You'll see that we added on page 6, the athletic stadium. Of course, our athletic stadium is gorgeous, and people are going to want to use it. So we've added a section there. With regard to these changes, again, Brad and Mark are here to answer any questions you have.
If I may, right off the top, just some typographical changes maybe. In the top here, it says, for use of the Saber Center for the Performing Arts, see School Board Policy 3630, Saber Center for the Performing Arts Policy or Facility Use. That's actually 3631.
Oh, thank you.
So that new policy that's going into play is actually going to have a new number, so we can just change that. And then another simple one, I think, would be on that one you just referenced, athletic stadium, that actually falls under C, and I think that could use another number, which I think would be 7. You got standard room.
Yep,
So
correct.
go ahead and number that one 7.
Thank you.
Sure. So those are some of the ones that jumped out at me, but I'll yield the floor if anyone else wants to has any comments on this.
Yeah, I do, and this will kind of also lead into the next policy, but in the first paragraph, the second sentence where it says, "The district realizes and appreciates that the facilities have been provided," I would like to suggest that we say, "The Board of Education realizes and appreciates," because we're talking about tax dollars, and it also leads into the new policy that we're going into, which I can't talk about until we get into that, but I have the same suggestion for that one. I mean, it's fine to talk about the district the rest of the way through, but since we're responsible for the tax dollars, I know it's been in there all along, but it just stuck out to me more because we were creating a new policy. Anyone's thoughts on that?
It is a board policy, so that
Yeah.
makes sense.
That's what I thought.
It's kind of a question of semantics, but I don't have a problem with it.
How would you want it to rate Board of Education, Franklin School Board? What are you looking for?
The Franklin Board of Education.
I'm okay with that change, personally.
I had a question. unless you had
I'm
another one,
finished,
Janet,
thank
about how we're categorizing the groups. Generally, for-profit, not-for-profit is, fairly straightforward, but there was some language, and again, I guess I'm kind of leading into the next policy too, but I think we have to be consistent between the two policies. And there was some language in the next policy about any event that charges a fee for tickets is considered a for-profit. So I don't know if that applies to this first policy or not, but I just think we need to clarify that and be consistent between
Under
the two.
number 2, where it says type A, I'm not sure if this gets at that, but number 2, type A, B, when an in-district not-for-profit group or event charges for an event, they are subject to all for-profit user charges. So if they are selling tickets, then they would be subject to for-profit user charges. Does that sort of get at it?
Yeah,
Does anyone need to help out with that?
okay.
General facility usage through the district, when that came into play years ago, was you get a not-for-profit, say a church or something coming in, and the district was always, they weren't gonna charge anything for it. Well, they would do a spaghetti dinner on a Sunday, and they would
Right.
charge people to come in for it, and the district in the past would write off the overtime. So what we're saying by this is that even though you're a not-for-profit, if you charge something to come to the event that's hosted at a school, you become a for-profit.
Okay. All right, I think that makes sense then. And yeah, and I hadn't seen it in this first policy, so,
Yeah, I kind of had a question on that too, extrapolating it out to the next level, but my question would definitely relate to the next policy, so I'm gonna hold on that, but. And I see the need for having the groups identified the same, so this may end up being revisited tonight yet, even though it might be in a different policy. Do you have anything else, Melissa?
Question on the charges, the schedule. We have things that are not determined yet. The pool and, I guess, why are they not in the policy at this time? We are approving these. Or reviewing this.
Maybe you
Typically, the ones that have the asterisks next to them, we don't have a fee for it. The swimming pool, there's, depending upon the group that comes in, are they gonna agree to use the lifeguards? And then how many lifeguards are they gonna need? How many hours is the pool open? Has a direct effect on what we would charge for the pool. Shop classes is the same thing. We wanna make sure that whoever wants to use the shop class as a licensed shop teacher comes down, and typically in the past, if they were an instructor, they have to go down and meet with the shop teachers themselves to make sure they were okay with them using the equipment and they knew how to use it. So there's a lot more variables in that than just assessing a fee and sign your permit and go use that facility.
Are they charged though, or?
They can be, yes. That's why in there, it's to be determined pending district approval is, what are you going in there for? How much of that equipment are you using? How long are you in for? Is it open to outside people, or is it strictly for in-district residents? There's a lot more variables than just saying they want a gym.
I think maybe you hit that on the head. What if we were to insert uses and charges vary and are to be determined pending district approval? That way we know that it's not something that's just hanging open, like, well, this hasn't been decided yet. It has been decided, and there are variables.
Is there a minimum or a range that you typically see?
Happen in the past, I mean, very few of these get rented, just due to the criteria that you'd have to be able to be a rentable person or a group. License, insurance, a lot of that stuff, people think it would be great to have a woodworking club, and then they realize when they come down there that the shop teacher showed them the equipment and it's not what they thought it was. So we've never, I mean, some of the stuff we don't even do. I mean, the pool, I can tell you, has typically been $50 an hour. And then you add the lifeguards on, depending upon what your bather load is in the pool. You've got more people, you need more lifeguards, so if people don't understand that, and to try to write it that way with how many people per lifeguard, or you have the diving well open, that's another lifeguard. So there really aren't a flat fee that's associated with a lot of this.
typically on those, a simple statement like fees will be determined based on usage requirements.
Yeah, I think that would,
That covers
yes.
everything.
Because I interpreted it as you were still working on it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
you're right.
So you have that, Judy, right? Okay.
Under the permit fees, the $15 permit fee just to submit an application, it does say, except school-sponsored events that appear on the school calendar. Well, what gets on the school calendar?
You'd have concerts, you'd have Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts,
But where are those rules, I guess?
where those,
Rules on, how do I get on the school calendar?
each elementary school turns a calendar in, and it's on that schedule of dates that they can have it by.
Right, yes.
The facilitators of those groups know that. You have to get on the calendar, you have to make that with through each
Those
school.
are all internal groups.
Yeah.
But
We might
sometimes-
want to, I don't know if we need to get into this, but I think, because the calendar that we have printed and give out at the beginning of the year, oftentimes there are a lot of events that don't get put on there yet and would come on later. So maybe some thought should be given into, when you say school calendar, what does that mean? Because if they're talking about the calendar that we have printed and it's not on there, does that create any confusion? Or, I think to Amy's point, maybe we could just say the calendars under the school, the individual school calendars or whatever. I'm just trying to think of, so somebody doesn't think that the one we have printed is the be-all, end-all.
Right, because I ran into an issue with this when my kids were involved with soccer. We were going to start spaghetti, have a spaghetti dinner thing. And it wasn't on the calendar because, the school calendar is months before. So I didn't want to pay $15 for an application fee when it would have been on the school calendar, but sometimes, as Steve said, things change, but.
But I think, Lynn, in those cases, when those organizations submit the fee to do that, then it's when it's publicized, then that's what takes care of it not being on the calendar. It's because it's an event that may come up maybe for second semester that nobody thought they were even going to have a spaghetti supper. That way they can, and it's not on any calendar, so they would just pay the fee, do it, secure it, and then do their own publicizing of whatever their event was, even though it's not on a calendar.
and I can tell you that on most of the elementary school calendars, the only things that are on there that are Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, it's their market day, it's their concerts, it's their band concerts, it's things like that that they want to make sure is reserved. And after school, during the normal school day for a band concert, they may not want anything out in the evening because they don't want to take the risers down or all the equipment out. Somebody wants to reserve a school for a spaghetti dinner, that's an outside the school event. That would be something that they would have to reserve with the rec department, and that's where that application fee comes in.
Well, this would have been a team. The soccer team's going to have a spaghetti dinner.
A high school soccer team?
Yeah,
Oh.
that's how we did that and got stuck with this fee, and I just would hope there'd be some way to, some leeway in how you apply this.
Did the soccer team submit a waiver? Because there is a waiver.
I-
Often, I would think something like that, that benefits our teams, typically we give a waiver.
And the coach would work with Sarah and Earl on reserving the facility, and I can tell you that if they were charged, they should have been. I mean, anything that's school-related, that even if they don't make the calendar.
Again, that's why I thought school calendar is a little bit, we can tighten it up a little bit.
What do you suggest?
As you just indicated, any groups that would benefit the school groups, Boy Scouts, teams, team activities.
I'm sure we can come up with something.
I guess where's the waiver policies in there? I didn't see a waiver.
Generally, you don't have policies for waivers. They're built into an existing policy of fees and so on. So if there was a reason or a condition under which a waiver would occur, it's usually just a little asterisk saying, so-and-so may waive this due to unusual circumstances, or this fee may be waived.
And
Those
it's
kinds
under
of-
2E.
Two,
Yeah, to cancel the event or request a waiver of fees. People have the ability to do that, but if they're charged a fee or they think they fall into a different category, they ask for that to come to the monthly facility usage committee,
Perfect.
and we talk about it, and if there's a Boy Scout group that, after that individual calendar's out and they form after the fact, and they come in, their fees are waived.
it's under where?
Isn't there a spot on that, like the room reservation fee where it says, do you want to apply for a waiver? There's a box or something on there, because I just planned the wrestling team banquet in April, and we didn't pay, I was in charge of the money and everything and making the reservations, and there was no fee that I paid to the school district for us to hold it in the high school cafeteria. So I'm feeling like there's a box on there or a place on there where you say this is a school event, or you want the waiver or something like that.
I guess I'm not seeing, where's the waiver? 2B, you said?
E,
2E.
Page 2.
page 2, 2E.
Page 2.
I'm going to throw a couple things out while she's looking.
Okay.
You mind? Under B, this is just some language suggestions I'm just going to throw out there. Under B3, permission for use of school equipment should be through the facility use permit process. I think should be must. You want that to be through the facility use. That leaves a little bit of wiggle room. Permission for use of school equipment must be through the facility use permit process. That's how we want it to go, right? And anybody on the board have any?
Yep.
Okay. Under B10, same thing. If a group needs to cancel its facility use, the group should contact the community education recreation department. I think that should be must. You want to be notified, right, Brad?
I do.
Yes. So, and then this other, let's see, yeah, this other one, under 1, it reads, the second sentence under B1, for the purpose of this policy, an adult is considered to be a person that is a minimum of 21 years old and who is financially independent and responsible. I highlighted financially independent and responsible because I don't know how that could possibly be determined. I know the idea behind it, but I don't think that language is necessary for the purpose of this policy. You want to have the person who's a minimum of 21 years old, and then if that were to be struck, it would then read, the adult shall arrive at the school prior to the scheduled time of event, shall remain until all group members have departed. The named event shall be responsible for the proper supervision. I mean, all the other protection is in there, but I don't know how one will determine if they're financially independent and responsible. That seems too subjective. Any comments?
Prom was written in 1987. Prom is a good idea.
How you doing?
Times have changed. Times have changed.
So,
We're still in high school.
yeah, I would agree, it's pretty difficult to identify. You could leave and responsible, but I'm not sure
We're
what your
getting rid of
measures.
the VCR, come on.
Yeah,
I see that. We're upgrading from there, so those are some of the, and then, the last one, this might generate some discussion, but, the very first line that's inserted under facility use reads, all facilities excluding the Sabre Center for the, this is for all facilities excluding the Sabre Center, for use of the Sabre Center performing arts, I'm sorry, that wasn't what I wanted to, look at. It was the identification of the committee.
What page are you on?
I am trying to find it. Here we go. On page 2, okay, I'm sorry. This is in administrative rules, not in the policy. So in administrative rules, the second paragraph, it talks about the facility usage committee. And they shall meet regularly to monitor, assign, and schedule facility usage. And the addition to this, and listing all the people who shall be on the committee, community education and rec manager, manager of buildings and grounds, or designee, high school administrator, high school head custodian, community education and recreation secretary, and the Sabre Center manager / technical director. We have an entirely separate policy for the Sabre Center, and that, is exactly what, we're still trying to find it, I'm sorry. Page 2, right at the top,
Of the administrative
administrative
rules?
rule, not in the policy, the administrative rule. So second paragraph in administrative
It's
rule.
right under the title.
Sorry, I thought it was, okay. To cut to the chase, I'm questioning why we want to have the Sabre Center manager / technical director on this facility use committee when I would like to have you spend your time booking that facility, getting groups in there, and not worrying about what wrestling team is going to schedule a banquet in the cafeteria or what soccer club wants to rent the field. When I first read this, that was my opinion, that I don't know that you really want to or should be or need to be in these meetings.
Well, I think Brad and Mark can speak a little bit to what happens in the meetings to begin with.
Right. On the other hand,
maybe I missed that connection then on the other policy. I didn't see the committee on the other policy. I was truly looking at those two as separate policies. So you're more creating the committee and having him part of the committee as part of the overall district facility usage, rather than me looking at it where, well, why is he getting bogged down into some of these other areas that don't have anything to do with the Sabre Center? That's what you're saying.
Right, yeah, in order to stay consistent, and I think there's gonna be times when we're talking about something at the PAC relative to 3631, and sometimes when we're talking about things relative to 3630. And I think it keeps us all going in the same direction and pulling on the same.
Okay.
There'll be a number of school-related activities happening there, and Mike Nowak sits on this committee. So if Steve Kraus is there, he's in the know in terms of what's going on at the school and what activities, are going to be in that facility. And it gives Mr. Kraus here a connection to some colleagues to work with. Otherwise, he's on his own, and I just felt it was a really good decision for him to be a part of this group. Would he have to attend every meeting? Maybe not, but for now, I think it's a really good decision to have him have a team.
I thought the same thing, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I thought the same thing as you when I first read it, but then I read it a couple times and thought it's more like a sounding board kind of.
Well, I think
Group.
this would have made more
Yeah.
sense to me had this paragraph been in the other policy.
It's too early to have it in the other policy. We're still establishing some of the protocols for that particular facility right now.
Well, to just establish the committee, though?
Pardon me?
Just to establish a committee?
Yeah, right now, I think that there's a committee in terms of the whole, because we're working on the construction of it yet and many of those things, that in terms of the operations from it, the policy is well outlined. But as we get going and we want to have, for example, community organizations that might have, like a community theater or whatever, we might want to involve some of those kinds of people like South Milwaukee does to look at it. So I think it's too new yet to establish that. Right now, we have Steve, myself, Mike Nowak, Nick, high school people. We involve our music people when we have conversations regarding what we're going to do there. So I think we have to get our feet in the mud a little bit more with a lot of things that we want to do and don't want to do and that kind of thing.
Well, all this makes a much clearer picture now as to why that language was put in there. Again, just when I didn't see it in the other facility, or the other policy, I was just looking at them as completely separate documents, so.
Mrs.
And,
Klein?
well, I was just gonna say, and there are likely to be events multiple times a year at the high school where they might use the Sabre Center plus the cafeteria, or the Sabre Center plus, a set of classrooms or something. So there needs to be that coordination too, and it gives you guys that mechanism to do that.
The high school administrator designee is Sarah Earl, the athletic director. So that brings in all the co-curriculars and the plays and things, and then when it's homecoming, so it really helps Steve book his facility or know what dates are, you call them blackouts, right? That you really, there's gonna be no parking for homecoming, so there's a coordination that way too, that you can mirror schedules, and he knows when he has, when he needs to be.
I guess I kind of wonder about anybody being named on this committee. This is a policy, and we're locking in people to the committee. Can't we make it, that there shall be a committee of no less than 5 people, and then let Dr. Pats determine who should be at that?
Well, actually, this is administrative
Yeah,
rule.
that's not even the policy.
So-
Oh.
So that changes as they
Okay.
need
But to
to.
answer your question,
I think
those are the
we're-
people that have the most familiarity with what goes on there all the time.
Oh, I agree that he should be there. I mean.
No, I'm talking about all the other ones as
Yeah,
well.
and all of them. I'm not against them being there, but it just, I thought it was kind of restrictive to assign that these people are the ones who must be there. For example, if I wanted to be at one of those meetings just to sit in on it, would I be excluded then?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think
Because
it
you're
rep-
limiting
it-
people.
that it represents to the people who read the policy and the rules that we have a group that's representative making these decisions. It isn't just a random group. There are people who are representative of all these things there at the table. So when they are denied, that's the group.
Okay.
One thing before, if we end up going to vote here next, can we get the update then of all the changes you made notes of, whatever it's in the health policy has changed?
So how would you like to handle that? Do you want a second read on this? Because I can do that, or I can, in the past, you've allowed me to make the changes, approve it, pending, you know, that, as long as I make the changes you've suggested. And I can go through them real quick as part of the motion.
Well, I think everyone was in concurrence with the changes. I'm just saying, once they're made, can you just send out the new policy so we just can see it?
The way we've done it in the past is the board would approve it pending the changes.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Or just let us know when it's posted, and I can just, that's all.
I have a question on the stadium rates. What is the basis? Are they cost-based or are they market-based? How did you determine the rates that we see here?
Market-based. We have the policies from Oak Creek, Whitnall, and Greendale, the other school districts that have turf stadiums, looked at what they charge, and came up with our rates accordingly.
How do we compare?
Greendale is more expensive. We are right in the pack with Whitnall and Oak Creek. You'll see some of them charged by the hour, and I thought that to have a custodian trying to be out there to look at when they started and ended, that's why we went with per contest. But it equates out to what a typical football game would be on the other ones per hour.
Well, I guess you'll know after you get some inquiries, if either no one's booking or you get some blowback on why the rates are where they are, then we'll know, right? But it'd be nice if we can get it being used,
We've got people that are waiting for this to know what the fees are so that they can look at next year and even coming up in spring for using the athletic stadium.
Good.
Do I hear a motion to approve revised board policy 3630 with the additional changes made tonight?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Klein. Is there any other discussion?
I just had one question. Am I leaving in school calendar at this point?
We didn't change that.
We didn't change that?
Nope.
Okay.
Because the waiver question was addressed in 2E.
Correct.
Does the motion have to include the administrative rules?
I think so.
No, you're just approving the policy.
Just the policy.
So all of the administrative rules are not going to, they're not approved by the board?
They've been reviewed. They'll be identified as reviewed tonight and dated,
Okay,
but the policy will be identified as revised.
thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. And Mr. Nielsen.
Okay. Last policy up for review tonight is the new policy, 3631, Sabre Center for the Performing Arts Facility Use. Lengthy document. Well, it's pretty much all new. So did you want to tee this one up first? Or
I'm sorry?
did you want to tee this one up first? Or anything you wanted to add
Well,
before
I
we
think-
start? Or
Real quick, Mr. Kraus, Steve Kraus, has gone around and met most of you this evening. I'd like to just give him like a minute to just give you a tiny bit of his background, and how long you've been doing this and where. He's like, what? And I said a minute, and then
Song and dance?
he's here to answer your questions based on the policy that you have before you, so.
Well, I actually grew up in Union Grove, so I'm from around here. I did my undergrad at U of M Minneapolis and my graduate work at Purdue. And this will be my entering my 23rd year of managing school district performing arts centers. While I was a grad student at Purdue, I got a job, actually when I was still in school, north side of Indianapolis, Carmel Clay Schools. So I ran that facility for 12 years and moved back to Wisconsin. I've worked in the professional market quite a bit, but had the good fortune to be hired by Muskego back in January of 2004. So I spent the past decade and a half there, and have had even the better fortune of being hired here at Franklin to help open this facility. And it's kind of interesting. I see Franklin poised at exactly kind of the same place, maybe not exactly, but a similar place that Muskego was 10 and a half years ago. When they opened the facility then, within 2 years, we more than doubled our enrollment in band and choir. Didn't have an orchestra. So Franklin, I think, is right at that point right now. Now we have the facility in which to grow and expand, where the directors no longer are burdened with having to fight the room, having to do their own lights and sound such as they were. We're ready to launch. So I'm very excited about being here. Basically, my function tonight is to help answer questions. I've had a lot of wonderful collaboration with Parks and Recs, administration, and everybody putting this policy together. It is not a warmed over version of Muskego or Carmel or any place. This is specific to Franklin. And there are many things within this policy that I think are very useful, but I'm completely open to suggestion. I'm the new guy. So as we go through this and review it, please, please, please let us know your thoughts. And more than happy to change, improve, or do whatever is best for Franklin School District.
Thank you.
Well, welcome. I also want to let you know that Mrs. Schlueter is our Building and Grounds Board Liaison, so perhaps she might get to meet you personally with Mr. Cloutier sometime. I'd like to suggest that, as I did with the other policy, that in the first paragraph, we say the Franklin Board of Education, and then strike district. And then I also saw that in the second sentence where it says, therefore, it is our policy, since we're already talking about the Board of Education, therefore it is our policy to cooperate. So therefore striking the and then of the Board of Education, just to make it simpler. And I can give you this sheet if you want, that I have that.
Sure, thank you. Make sure I get it right. Thank you.
Okay. And I don't know if anyone has an objection to that. So then it would read.
I don't follow it here.
So then it would read, the Franklin Board of Education recognizes that the school facilities belong to the residents of the Franklin Public School District. Therefore, it is our policy to cooperate with community agencies.
Yeah, instead of listing that twice. Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
Sticking in that same policy, in the third paragraph, first sentence reads, the district encourages informal resolution of complaints under this policy. However, if any person believes that the district or any part of the school, and it continues on. And then the second, at the end there, it says, he, she may bring or send a written complaint to the following address. And it gives it, I'm just wondering if we shouldn't put in formal, if we make the point that we want to handle these resolutions informally whenever possible. However, if they want to do a written complaint, that would be a formal written complaint?
A written complaint is a formal written complaint. As soon as
That's
it's in writing,
redundant
it's
then.
formal.
Perfect, okay. That was easy.
Is this something that our legal counsel has looked at, or do they need to look at it, or?
No, I
No.
think we had some pretty good templates to work
Okay.
from, and I didn't see anything in here that would require that.
Okay. I was just curious as I was reading it.
Question, I'm curious as to why we won't allow carrying of water. Why can't you bring in a water bottle?
Because water turns into juice, it turns into soda, it turns into Gatorade, and it turns into a mess. And as soon as you open the crack in that door, Steve will attest to that, I will from previous performing arts centers I've been in, it's a road you don't go on. And I know it sounds real simple to say no water, but trust me, it will turn into a nightmare for our custodial staff, and it will open the doors as soon as you see somebody drinking something, it turns into other things.
Absolutely, and in addition to that, when the patrons bring in the crinkly water bottles, they're really loud.
Oh,
Most performing arts centers in here don't allow any food or drink at all, not even gum.
No, but you do bring up a good point. Are you referring to water in the
Especially that
theater? Or are you referring to carry-ins? Where were you referring to that one? Because I agree with your point. You don't want to have the crinkling water bottle. I don't think we want to have food or drink in the theater, but.
No water in the house, but we can't stop somebody from coming from the parking lot, walking into the foyer area, but that's where we'll have containers for those to be disposed of. But once you approach the doors going into the house, no.
By the house, you mean what I would call the theater?
The theater,
Right,
yeah.
Right. Right, because there's language that isn't consistent with that comment, and that I think we'll end up visiting here over the next few minutes, that, that I think would be I think it'd be reasonable to have somebody, like you say, come in from the parking lot or whatever if they have something, but certainly you don't want it in the theater.
No, and we will also be there will be events where we will coordinate with the use of the cafeteria, and we will have people stationed at those doors so food and beverage don't even come out of there. It's, it's a real rigid, but necessary practice.
I'm just trying to think of grandma coming in just to watch performance, and she needs a little water.
Grandma's gonna have to go out and get some water,
And I attend theater at the Rep, and they allow covered cups in. So it just seems a little unfriendly. But,
Just trying to keep it nice for as long as you can.
well, we expect people, adults, to be responsible.
I would tell you that the adults
Have
are
you
the
ever been
biggest,
to a sporting
the kids
event
aren't
with
the problem with
adults?
this, it's the adults.
Okay, it seemed a little harsh to me.
Are there drinking fountains in the lobby area? Okay. Or bubblers, as we say in Wisconsin.
Item, this is B
What page?
15. Are there page numbers? 1, 2,
Six.
3,
No.
4. Page 4, item 15.
B15? B15?
Yeah.
Yes. Only local calls are permitted from Saver Center phones.
I'll answer that one, because Steve and I, when
I'm like,
Judy and I
what?
were reviewing this, I said, what's that all about? Well, occasionally you'll have people from an outside group, or maybe even possibly our own, coming in and using the Saver Center and feel like they can call Chicago to have a new light bulb brought in for, if they were a performing arts group that came in. There's the potential for someone to go into the office, and like I told Steve, it should be locked. But if it's not, if for some reason someone lets somebody in or to use the phone thinking it's a local call, I had the same reaction you did,
Yeah,
Linda.
we're trying to think of every possible thing here. Can we,
To answer that question, yes.
Yeah.
But that one, I agree with you, and when I went and talked to Steve, I sort of chuckled, and we all sort of did, and it's probably one of those that looks ridiculous, but
See, I was reading it the other way. I was wondering, were you trying to say that if someone tries to make a call, it only allows local calls? But I wasn't thinking someone going into the office area. I thought there was maybe phones out in a general area, but they only make local calls. But that's not what you mean here. You mean if someone were to get into an area to
yeah. Steve, you want to address it any further than?
I think you covered it. A rental patron will have access to the box office, and so we don't want them calling all over the place.
Got it.
Most people have a cell phone anyway.
Exactly that.
on C1, all technicians must be certified by the Saver. What does that mean, certified? What kind of certification are you referencing?
They need to be in my training program, and I keep a running tab of their skill set. It's largely subjective, but it's based on some very strict criteria. In other words, you can't, that's there, so somebody off the street can't come in and say, hey, I'm bringing in my own crew. Not with our equipment, you're not. And that happens.
I was wondering if there was some national certification, but it's our
Well,
local
yes,
certification is not.
Maybe certified is not the best choice of words, but,
Approved?
I couldn't think of a better one. In other words, they have to be in the training program, and they must pass the test, or whoever's sitting in my chair.
What about approved?
That makes it seem more subjective, like it's just at
You
his
just
whim.
said it
whereas-
was.
It is
Yeah,
kind of
but certified has more, I mean, it's a class, you said, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's more like a sport. I'm not a certified teacher, I don't have my teaching license, but the crew and I meet every day after school, and it's very much like a sport or activity. I'm the backstage coach. So basically, you have to be on the team to, first off, learn how to do it, and secondly, play the game, be on the crew, run the equipment.
Right.
Well,
Qualified.
What are you gonna do if you have a person nationally certified in something that wants to, say, yeah, I'll work on the equipment? Now you've just said they must be certified, the person is certified, how are you gonna stop them? I kinda like approved. It's your call. You don't like them, they're too short, whatever. They're out of here. I like the word approved.
Mrs. Larson said qualified. What about Franklin qualified?
You could say demonstrate proficiency, that is the vernacular we use for report cards.
I think that does. I think approved.
Yeah.
So this whole one is about students?
Yes. The Sabre Center crew is all students and under my direct supervision and training.
Now, in item C, under that same says, all students will receive overtime pay.
Yes,
So it's like, are we paying them, and what rates are we paying them? Or
that's a very good point. When we go into rental mode, when a client is renting the space, they pay for technicians. And that is, my top technicians, they earn their way to those positions. So there are no fees assessed, nor is the crew paid for any school activity, co-curricular or curricular. But a rental, yes, they are, and the crew does get paid for that. So that's what that, any reference to pay or breaks or anything related to payroll, it applies strictly to a rental.
So it's like a lifeguard getting paid. I have a question about page 5, item 2, where it says the Sabre Center manager, technical director has authority over the general facility and parking lot. How do you have time to also watch the parking lot?
There we go.
Yeah, I mean,
Basically, that if something related to the Sabre Center spills out of the parking lot, I still have authority. But I'm not out there parking cars.
Give an example, Steve, of the trucks or whatever.
Well, if, for instance, we're doing a load-in, and we have a truck backed into the loading dock, and there's some activity happening out there, I still have authority over it. In other words, no, truck driver, you cannot smoke your cigarette here, or something to that effect.
Or you have to move the truck.
Or, yes,
Get it out.
exactly. And we have some rules pertaining to, how long you can be at the dock.
Right,
that kind of thing.
19's got it covered.
And how many, we wouldn't want 3 semis coming up and taking all the parking spots for an event because they're parking out in the middle of our parking lot. So Steve would have the availability or the jurisdiction to be able to say, move it somewhere else.
Not like I have a lot of plans, or plans to spend a lot of time in the parking lot, but if the need
It's a
were
rarity.
arises.
I think a lot of these items have come from other policies at performing arts centers, and they didn't dream them up. They're the direct result of something going wrong.
Right, like glitter, maybe?
Exactly.
Dance competitions or dance shows?
You gotta bring your own floor?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You don't,
Oh, yeah.
you don't want tap shoes on that.
That pertains particularly if we do bring in some of these enormous dance companies that have 200, 300, 600 dancers. They might not be very big, but you literally have hundreds of little ball-peen hammers pounding on your stage floor. And I could cite several examples of theaters that had to replace their floor. These giant dance companies are not like regular shows. You need to have some rules specific to that phenomenon. So the Marley floor, that will protect our floor, especially, we have a new maple floor. It's beautiful. It works really well, especially with our orchestra shell. It's going to take a couple of years for that floor to break in, but we don't want it damaged in the meantime. In other words, the floor breathes, it expands, it contracts. For the first couple of years, there will be some gaps opening up. That's perfectly normal, but you don't want to tap dance on that. You want to have it covered. And it's a good general rule in any event to have a Marley floor for that.
I had the same question that Linda had about the last policy as far as the pricing goes. Is this pretty comparable to what facilities in our area are charging?
It is. It's
Okay.
market-based.
Okay.
There are some a little lower. There are some that are quite higher. So we're about in the middle.
Okay.
Reference that, instead of back to the certified approved, what about authorized?
I just really want to respect the high level of expectation that
That's
Steve
why I
has.
thought authorized would be a little more respectable than approved.
I think he tells these young adults that they have to be certified, they have to pass his test, correct? So I just don't want to lose track of that meaning there.
I think maybe some of the confusion is when I read this, it says all technicians must be certified. I thought, you mean all student technicians must be certified. Is that what you mean? Because it doesn't say these are, you got the word student in there, but I didn't necessarily
Anybody who's got your hands on it.
mean this was students.
Well, if we were to add the phrase students, it would imply that other technicians who aren't students don't need to be certified. So I'm just kind of keeping it generic. It will be students, but that pretty much is a catch-all and will cover any technician. Have to be certified, approved by the TD.
If you were short technicians for a show or something, you might have to go out and get a technician that's a professional to fill in for that, wouldn't you? And you would certify them, you know their skill set.
Absolutely. Just as obviously, I wouldn't hire them unless I knew that they could do the job. But I've never had to do that, and I don't want to, because this is a really nice reward for those students who've worked the hardest and have attained that level of skill where they deserve to get paid for a gig. Now, it's maybe, I don't know, 5–10% of what we do. It varies from year to year as per number of rentals, but it's a nice reward and it's a little bit of a carrot.
When I was first going over the policy, and I had a conversation with Judy on this, what jumped out at me in the beginning is, these policies, as we read before, on these other policies, it's more third person, more factual, here's how it goes. This policy, when it starts out, it gets a little more into the second person, regarding your preferred booking. It's not written consistent with the rest of the policy, and so when I started making some notes, I kind of got bogged down, but then when I got past it and I looked at the rest of the policy, that type of language wasn't in there, and it was more consistent with how these other policies are written. So, as a for instance, when I was just, and I have some of this written up, if this ends up getting passed by the board, like all prospective users must review this entire okay, hold on a second, I'm sorry. Administrative rules, right in the first paragraph, starting out administrative rules, that's where I am. All prospective users must review this entire Sabre Center for the Performing Arts Usage Policy documents. If your application involves potentially renting the facility, please also review the Sabre Center. You see how that kind of changed right there?
Sure.
So my suggestion for that opening paragraph was all applicants must review and agree to adhere to this entire Sabre Center for the Performing Arts Usage Policy document. The fee structure can be found in Appendix A of the administrative rules. That would be one suggestion
Sure.
as to how we rewrite that.
I guess I gave it some thought as well. I think you could leave the first sentence and just change the second sentence by saying, if an application involves potentially renting the facility, review the Sabre Center fee structure document. So there's just fewer changes and it gets the
I'd be
first
flexible
person out.
however you want to do it, but you
Yeah,
can
and
understand where I was coming from with
I
it.
noticed that number
Okay.
2, we could start with the applicant will contact and take out your and change it to the. I already kind of spent some time on that, Mr.
Okay.
Nielsen, so I will ensure that any first person references are revised.
Thank you. Now, I was just going to, if I may, any application questions? Like for one, I had any application questions shall be directed to the Sabre Center manager/technical director. And then 2, I almost have is unnecessary since 1 requires the manager to approve the booking prior to use. How would you feel, Steve, if you feel like 1 kind of covers 2? So prior to its use, the Sabre Center technical manager must approve all booking dates, activities, and equipment being used by the Sabre Center. But then 2 reads, contact the Sabre Center manager or technical director regarding your preferred booking dates with any other application questions. You'd have to do that if you want to book
That is a
anything.
little redundant,
So my suggestion would be 2 actually could be removed because it's covered in 1. And then 3, and Judy, that's fine, you have 3 changed with the U reference.
Sure.
I think what I'll do is I'll just provide you with what I wrote, and if you feel you want to use it, great. If not, that's fine.
Thank you.
Now, with regard to number 5, with regard to number 4, where it starts a $250 deposit, I had a $250 deposit shall accompany the signed contract and applies directly to the final rental billing, no deposit is required for no-charge contracts. Because that's, as it's in there now, it applies, if there's a deposit required if it's a rental billing, but the language is silent as to whether it's a non-rental billing. Again, just thought. And then if that's in there, the only other comment I had was 7 may be unnecessary. Please consult the Sabre Center for the Performing Arts fee structure document for other rental instructions and requirements. If that is going to be referenced in the opening paragraph, as you just said, then we really wouldn't even need 7 because that's already addressed.
If you go back to 4, do you want that to be a $250 non-refundable deposit?
It is refundable, given enough notice.
Right.
If you look at number 6,
Yeah, number 6 addresses how it would be refunded. So no, I wouldn't be interested in making that non-refundable. I think we want to make this as warm and inviting and as welcoming as, as possible.
But no water.
No water. Wow, I'm
I
getting
don't know if
thirsty
I'm
right
on board
now.
with that. Not in the theater, no.
You done?
Well, for now.
Okay, I have on
I have
7,
a few hours tonight.
B7, fundraising, bake sales, and the like must be arranged with the food service assistant and conducted in the cafeteria. Is this about is the cafeteria in the Sabre Center? It just seemed to like come out of nowhere.
It's right across the hall.
There's a
The
door.
door is connected.
The lobby opens to it.
What that means to say is you can't, out in the lobby of the Performing Arts Center, have a bake sale.
Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I knew there was something you didn't want happening, but I wasn't sure what it was. That helps.
Do I-
Who's the food service assistant, though?
She's the secretary to Monica Hutler, our food service director.
do any of these, I'm sorry,
So she can approve these now, or? So there can be bake sales, though? It
There
said-
can be
In the cafeteria.
in the cafeteria.
In the cafeteria, okay.
do those bake sales have to go by our nutrition guidelines? If they're, with our, yeah, they have to fit into our nutrition guidelines.
No, I'm not asking that because I don't like our nutrition
Yeah,
guidelines.
Neither do
There-
I.
there's-
I don't like having all these rules and then turn around and see kids walking out with Mountain Dews and all the other kind of stuff, and parents bringing them pizzas, and to me, it's an oxymoron. But there's the
It might
rules
rub
of the law.
off.
Huh?
It might rub off on them,
Yeah, good.
The cookies were a downgrade, but I digress. I got that feedback.
Is
from
there
my
any
brother.
That's my point.
concessions in the area? I'm not familiar with
I like
the
cardboard.
facilities, I don't know.
Those hot dogs with those buns.
There's no ability,
There can be, as a matter of fact, with Red.
oh wait, we don't want food in there, got it.
There's no, space to sell concessions.
There's nothing, okay.
Yeah, the cafeteria, even with the facility usage, anytime somebody requests usage of food, everything is referred up to the kitchen staff because that has to do with their using their line, their utensils. It gets into, if you're, depending upon if you're using a la carte line or using the kitchen lines, there's the food being prepared there. So that all is referred to the kitchen staff to make that determination of whether it has to be staffed and what equipment and what stuff has to be open for them.
It just seemed odd to be in this policy when that would be in the other.
It's in this one too, facility usage.
I'll jump in with one here. In B5, this is kind of just more of a general theme. If a user organization or any of their participants, audience, et cetera, does not adhere to the Sabre Center House rules, the event will be discontinued and the user organization will not be permitted to use the facility in the future. I would be a proponent of putting in, was substituting will for may, to give you the discretion, because if you read, and this theme is common throughout.
Which will?
What?
Which may just be discontinued or may not be permitted?
I would say both.
Okay.
Because that would give you the ultimate discretion in how you're going to handle the infraction. And what I would do is I would simply refer to the policy that we passed with the changes of all these fee changes and all these things that are designated in the contracted staff. And at the very bottom, it reads, The assessment for breach of contract may be waived by the district administrator based on consideration of unusual circumstances. I think leaving wiggle room in a policy is a good idea, and leaving discretion in a policy is a good idea.
I agree, because it may not affect that particular group or an incident, but it might be another one that comes up and now you're caught. You can't do anything about it.
You might have one knucklehead in a group that now is gonna ruin for the group forever, and I don't think that's the intent, but that's the way it was written. So I would, if the board's okay with that underlying philosophy, I would give Dr. Miller the latitude to please, if you could address those changes rather than bringing it up one by one. Does that sound good, Steve?
Yes,
Perfect.
good call.
Thank you. And I suppose, to go right after the next one here, number 6, food and drink of any kind are prohibited in the Sabre Center stage, house, lobby, and seating areas. I do agree that having food or drink in the theater, is that called the house, we're referring to that as the house?
The house is seating.
House, and seating areas, I'm right on board, but having refreshments in the lobby, people are gonna come in from the parking lot. We do have the fountains with water bottle fill-ups in that outside area. I don't see a problem with people drinking in the lobby, coming right from the cafeteria. So now you mean to tell me we're gonna have a bake sale, we're gonna do whatever we do in the cafeteria, and now no refreshments, no snacks? Mom's got her 3-year-old going to an event, and they want a little juice box, and no juice for you, you know? So I would ask that we would consider that and have,
I hear where you come from, Tim, but trust me, you open that crack in the door, and it's gonna come back to burn you every time.
And I would defer to Mr. Kraus here, who's done this for 22 years. Can you tell us more about what happens?
It's good to have the rule on the book.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to hit people over the head with it, but it's not bad to have the big stick. So it's discretionary, but you really need to have some pretty specific language that is fairly strict.
okay. Like, I mean, having the signs above the door, no food or beverage allowed, you know, and maybe this language maybe this is how the language is in other policies, and they are more lax and don't necessarily enforce it, but I can't remember
It's
last time I
probably the
was in.
same, Tim, in terms of when you want that flexibility regarding the last one where you put may.
Yeah.
This is sort of the same thing, and Steve's analogy is a good one. We need to carry the big stick, but it doesn't mean we're gonna whack anybody over the head. So if someone walks in, if they're having a bake sale and they come out into the lobby area, we're not gonna walk up and say, get rid of that water. But if they approach the house doors, then we will say, you need to leave that here, put it in the container. But as long as we have it, people are gonna read it and understand that I'm not gonna come from the outside and just walk in and do it. And that will happen.
Or if it were to become a problem, you would have something to refer to that, hey, it is in policy, we don't allow this, well, and that's why we just bring it up for discussion, but if it's something where it's a point that, you know, you're that passionate about, but
And
I'd
these,
really like to have my water in the lobby,
This policy
if
is
you don't
going to be
mind.
read by the user, so
Right.
the 200 children who come in to dance, prohibited, because they'll be running around everywhere with food and drink. We're not talking about the people coming to watch the performance necessarily when we, you know, this is the user. So you don't want those big groups coming in with their bag lunches, sitting in the lobby on the floor, spilling juice.
All right. I did have a question that came out, though, from my daughter, actually, who's in some of the performances and stuff. What about backstage for the performers? Are they allowed to have drink?
Typically not unless somebody has a sore throat or something like that. Again, that's discretionary, but you have to have the rule in place, or you might have a middle school show with 45 water bottles. We do always prohibit anything carbonated or sugared, but your lemon water, singers need that sometimes.
Well, and that's what I was getting
Yeah.
at, especially the musicals. I mean, they come off stage and they're looking for something to,
So yes, the answer to your question is yes, but again, it's sort of the big stick concept. We'll make exceptions when the exceptions are warranted,
Okay.
but overall, no, don't bring the stuff backstage. Or I've seen, you know, the water bottles and things just accumulate in the rigging system and all over the place, rolling into the orchestra pit. So have the rule and enforce it judiciously.
fair enough.
They're very thorough. Thank you for bringing all your expertise to us.
Well, thank you. We did look at a lot of different policies, and again, this is customized for Franklin. I know from experience what works best,
And there are some things that we left out. There are some things that we put in, like the tripod rule is really important. Quite frankly, I could never get that to fly at Muskego, and we had problems. So there were some things put into the policy that, again, based on experience, I think are going to be really useful for our situation.
Well, I appreciate your insight, and all that you bring to the facility and the job, and helping me personally gain a better understanding of really what was behind the rules when you put it together. And sometimes you get tunnel vision and looking at how something should read and take a step back and look at the big picture, so.
So thank you very much, and thank you so much for your input. Some really good observations.
Any other comments? Hearing none, then do I hear a motion to approve Board Policy 3631 with the suggested changes tonight?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mrs. Schleter. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen, Dr. Miller, and nice meeting you tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
So what's the first show?
Well, actually, one of our first big events, we'll have the heroin presentation, Heroin in the Burbs, at the end of the month. It's open to the entire community. We are bringing in a guest speaker for, his name escapes me, Jack Raymond's, right before homecoming. That's more of a
I just
student
saw that
thing.
come across.
But we've been doing all kinds of different presentations for classes. Had NHS in this morning. We've had, I think somebody mentioned Inroads, had them in a couple of times. So we're up and running, but we're not at full throttle yet. So we're working on it. So thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure meeting everyone, and hope to see you at the Sabre Center sometime.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, we have item 8, board action and discussion items. We have the youth options request. Dr. Paz?
I'm unfamiliar with this one, so I'm going to turn it over to Wendy real quick.
Yes, the youth options. We had a student, one request that came forward at this time, and so we're requesting, you saw it in your board packet, it's for a Spanish course. Again, protocol was followed, the student has exceeded the curriculum we offer in the district, so we're requesting approval.
Do I hear a motion to approve the youth options request as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Alexandrovich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Klein. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, this seems outside of our normal time frame for youth options. Why is that?
We have a time frame just to organize our work around this and ensure students get, we encourage students to follow our time frame so they don't forget or get missed. But there is, in the policy or in the statute, it states you should approve whatever comes forward
It's very
if
flexible.
appropriate. So it's a flexible time frame.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No. No. Abstention? Motion carries 6-1. Thank you. And next item is the financial reporting discussion, and I believe that's with Mrs. Witkowski, Mr. Alexandrovich? Yes? And
It's
Dr. Mills?
Linda's
Mr. Mills?
driving the
Okay.
car.
All right.
Okay, all right. Alan and I did meet with Jim some time ago, and we talked about some changes, and I'm just going to pass around a proposed change to the treasurer's report. No. And essentially, it is, oh,
If you have it up, I think you can put it up there.
this is probably pretty basic, so.
Okay.
What essentially it does, it takes the one or the 2 or 3 numbers that we get on a single, oh, I'm sorry, wait, somebody gets, I made 10 copies.
Extra?
Jim?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, essentially what we talked about doing is taking the couple numbers that we get on a single sheet of paper each month and just accumulate them in a trend that will provide some context for the number that we see each month. And so we would know, for example, you know, is it more or less than last month? And how did it compare a year ago? It would just give us some sense of how things are changing and how we're doing. And I believe that Jim is on board with this change.
Yeah, if the board wanted to see it this way instead of the way we show it each month, that would be fine. We can fill out this chart as we go. I guess one question I'd have, regardless of which way we go, is when we put down the future needs, like we'll need $4 million before the next meeting, is that helpful to anyone? Does anyone, you know, really need that, or can we stop doing that, as long as we're looking at it?
And actually, I see on the back is the, I thought it was printed, or maybe it didn't, there's dates, oh. You would also list the pay dates that were associated with that amount.
Out of that paragraph that I usually have.
Right.
Well, and those numbers typically don't change, and it's usually with regard to accounts payable and payroll and accounts payable. So if you're looking for feedback from me, no, it does nothing for me.
Okay.
As long as we have enough to cover, you know, for the next month.
I mean, the statement
I'm always
telling us
happy when
what
that
the needs
happens,
are.
too. Okay.
But this comparison is interesting. So it would just be a, you know, a constant 12-month historical and then add the next.
Correct.
You have to be careful with that 12-month comparison, though, because you cannot make any sort of a correlation between January of one year and January of another year, because it could be a January with 20 below and our heating costs are sky high, and it could have been January before or lower than heck. So I think I just encourage the board to not make that sound as important as it is, because they oftentimes will not even be anywhere near the same. At the same time, they could be.
Right. And we may get, you know, payments from the state at various times. They probably don't always come on the exact same day each year, do they?
No, they can be different and things can fluctuate. I guess I wasn't looking at a comparison between the years so much. You know, we could do 1 year and leave it in there in the library, and you could look back if you're interested, but just to see what happens throughout the year where we, you know, have less and less money until our tax money comes in.
Right.
And Jim, month number 1 is July?
Yeah, I think I would put the name of the month down rather than the number, just so we know what we're looking at.
Okay.
And our future needs on 4 and 5 were 3 million and 6 million? And the explanation for that?
All depends when our meeting is and how many payroll dates there are before the next meeting.
But he's suggesting we take that off.
No, I was just getting a clarification on that. But you're right, the future needs, the number is so consistent that it doesn't bring anything to the table.
I would agree on that, too.
So are we good with this?
Do I hear a motion to add, what would we, this would just be added to,
Just
added to
modify the treasurer's
Okay.
report.
Do I hear a motion to modify the treasurer's report with a document that Mrs. Witkowski presented?
Can I make that motion?
Yes, you can make the motion.
Oh, yeah, I'll make the motion to modify the treasurer's report.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Witkowski, second by Mr. Alexandrovich. Any discussion?
Does that mean future needs is gonna be in there, or no?
No.
No. Okay, with the removal of future needs.
I just had a question. Are you still gonna read it out loud or state it out loud some way?
That was one of the other things, I think we'd like to stop doing that.
Okay.
You have the information. I don't
Right.
think it's necessary to read it each time.
Would it still come up as I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just thinking for transparency for the public, will this show on our agenda somehow, or, because if it's not said out loud, and if it's not available, if this document isn't available, then the public doesn't have visibility to it.
Good point.
It's in state statute. We have to somehow make it available to the public. So whether it's read or, as you say, printed, we have to have some numbers.
Can we print it? I mean, there's nothing,
Put it on the
It has to be
agenda.
public in our minutes then. So the public can see every month what our balance was.
So putting it in the
No,
public
this wouldn't
portion
have to
of,
appear in the minutes.
it doesn't appear now?
No.
No.
Well,
The reading of the treasurer's report is in the minutes, but this document would not appear in the minutes. But this document could appear in the library or some other source, but the community, I think to Melissa's point, if they wanted to see the information that was on here, we have to provide that to them. I think what you're saying is when we read it, we at least give them that background.
Yeah.
Right. If somebody comes to a meeting, they hear those numbers or watch the video on the website. Even though it doesn't say it in the minutes what the exact values are, they know that it's being done. I don't know, I just think it's one consideration. Not that, you know, if anybody came in asking for it, they could certainly get access to it through a public or an open records request, but, I don't know. I don't want people to think that we're trying to hide anything from them.
But we could make the document accessible. Just
Right,
do it
and I
that way.
think that's fine too.
Through the system?
The Word docs.
Yeah.
any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Abstention? Motion carries 6-1. Thank you.
Okay, then I also have another revision to the report that Jim provides. And again, it's not any new information. It's the same information that Jim provides, but it puts it in context. And again, I'll wait till you hand it out. So the top part of the report, it does have some expanded descriptions. I mean, in the past, we got pretty cryptic descriptions of what these amounts were. Things like undifferentiated, I don't know what that ever meant, but Jim, I think, already has expanded on these in the last report that we saw. And it takes the revised budget July year-to-date unexpended balance in a percent. That is not anything different than what Jim currently provides. But below this, I've taken, again, this is a July report, and these are real numbers, and I compared it to the prior July. And again, to give us some reference point on how we're doing, and then just showing some variances. And based on what I'm seeing here in a very general way, you'll see that elementary classrooms technology purchases is much more than it was last year in July, and we were told it's probably related to the Chromebooks. So it's not like we wouldn't be aware of some of the changes that we see. And then also, you'll note that there's somewhat of a we're spending less on retirement expenses. We also see that there. And again, that's something that we would expect to see based on our actions that we've taken last year. So it just provides, I think, a little more context to the information that we're already seeing, and it enhances, I think it's a step up in terms of our financial review of the district's operation. And I think, we're asking our students and our parents and teachers to step up and make changes, and I think as a board, we should try and up our ability to understand and review financial information also that comes before us. I think this helps do that.
You have another copy, Linda?
I'm sorry.
Copy?
I agree that, this is interesting information. And this bottom part, though, this comparison to the prior year, to me, that almost seems more of an operational function, something that, might be something that the finance department looks at internally, but I don't necessarily think that needs to come to the board level. Others might disagree, but that's my take on it.
I think it's at the same level as, we adopt a budget, and again, it provides context. And I think it's, when we looked at the monthly information that we've gotten, I've actually lined it up every month, one big long sheet, and I noticed that we don't get a July report. We only get 11 months information because, is that correct, July or June? We don't get the last period of the year. And we spend a lot of money in that last period of the year, and there's reasons for that. It's June, correct? Or June, and there's a lot of maintenance going on. And also, I believe that payroll is accrued back to June also because of the way the teacher contracts are written. So there is a lot that happens in that last period that the board doesn't really see until we get the annual report. So when I look at the information that we have at the top, it doesn't really, it will always be less than budget and behind because it's backloaded. Our expenditures are backloaded in the fiscal year. So I believe a better reference point would be the prior year to help us see how things have changed and how we're doing. And it's just better information. And it's not at a level of detail that I believe is excessive. It's the same categories that we adopt the budget at. And, you know, maybe we can, if you're not comfortable, we could do it as a trial, try this out, see what the information looks like, and then reconsider it 6 months out. But I think it's worth taking a look at.
I would like to hear from Mr. Milzer and Dr. Pats how you feel about reporting something like this out. And are you looking at this for every month, or how are you?
I think, actually, I think quarterly would actually be more useful if we spent a little more time quarterly as opposed to not looking at it. You know, we get information, but we're not looking at it every month. But, and even 3 times a year, because typically the first quarter probably doesn't have a lot of activity. And we'd want to look at it more particularly as we're coming into the next budget. We want to know where we're at. So it wouldn't have to be every month. I think actually quarterly would be appropriate.
I think it, in my opinion, it oversteps the board's bounds in terms of, in your term you used, the financial review of the operations. That's why Jim Milzer's hired, and that's why we monitor our budget every year. And it's the board's responsibility to adopt a budget based on the presentation and the numbers we present. Though you say it's context, Linda, I still don't find the relevance or the value to it, because looking from one year to the next tells us nothing other than we've spent a different amount of money, which if we were to adopt this, if the board went to this, now we're going to have more questions, and we're getting deeper and deeper. And each time this is brought up, it's an attempt to go deeper and deeper into what our jobs are. Our jobs are to manage this district in a financial manner, and we do it well. And when the information we provide always balances our budget and does those things that the board oversees in terms of adopting a budget, approving the auditor's report, and so on. So I think it's just a continuation of the board getting immersed in the operations that are the responsibility of the administration.
I think the board does have a responsibility to review the financials. And if we're going to be spending time reviewing the financials, it should be something that's worthwhile.
Who is it worthwhile to? Because, and I know we've all made jokes, I've sat on this board for a long time. I mean, it's never been anything that's been brought up to be worthwhile to anyone except you. And I'm just wondering, how can you make it worthwhile to all of us? What about this is going to be worthwhile to all of us? Because it's got to be worthwhile but it's got to be something that we all want. It's got to be a document that we all want, that we're all going to use, that we're all going to look for. I mean, it's got to have relevance to us. And I think that was the best word Dr. Pats used, is what is the relevance going to be to all of us as a board? I understand it's very relevant to you because this is your baby. I understand that. But how is it going to be relevant to all of us as a board? That's the answer I'm looking for, and that's why I wanted to hear Dr. Patz's take on it, and that's why I'd like Mr. Milzer to talk or speak to why, you know, what you think of a document like this. Does this add extra time to your job? Does it take away from your job? Does it take away from something that you should be doing versus getting just another report to pile on, somewhat, you know.
Right, I think when we talked about it as a subcommittee or going over these kinds of things, I'm not in favor of this. I think the board's job with reviewing the budget is from a macro level, from the 20,000-foot level. How is that budget looking? And we see that year in and year out at the end of the year, this is how everything came out. Does it really matter that we spent a little more in June or July or October? It really doesn't matter. That's not really what the board wants, to have our expenditures be the same in July every year, or, those are just useless kinds of things. So I don't see a value in doing this. What I see is it creating a lot of questions, because anytime you put numbers together that we compare, it creates a question. And if we have something going on one year, not every year is the same. You might think it's very cyclical, and some of it is, but some of it's not. We make a big computer purchase or something like that. At a given point in the next year, we don't make it, or we make it at a different time. Now there's a question. I have the information in front of me, and now I want to ask, why is this different? Well, I may not know. Now I got to go back and look at last year what we did that month, and then I got to look at this year what we did that month. Now I can tell you exactly what's different. Did that add any value? I don't think so. It's just kind of useless information. I understand why Ms. Witkowski wants it, that she really likes the numbers and likes to look at that, and I appreciate that, but that's not really the role of the board. The role of the board is to be at a higher level than that, and I think we provide that information each month that allows you to see where it is. Now, we did have in our discussion, and I think Mr. Alexandrovich brought it up, something to say, is this budget doing well or not? Here's the numbers, but we have issues with timing in June and July. I think if I added a statement to our current reports indicating to you, yeah, we're financially, we're on track this month based on the numbers that we have right here, you at least would have a sense from my perspective that things are going well. Okay, things are going well this month, maybe things aren't going well right now. We're going to take a look at pulling back on expenditures or whatever it is, so that you don't have to guess or interpret what this means or how those revenues and expenditures line up. You'll have a statement from me indicating, what I believe is happening and what I see happening with the budget for the year. So I think that would be something that the board might want, that would give you a sense of security on what's happening, and to back up maybe your understanding, or to give you an understanding of the numbers without going through every line like that.
Jim,
Thank you.
I understand what you're saying about you don't see these numbers as being useful, because you see all these numbers all the time. You look at one of these numbers, you know all kinds of detail that supports it, and that gives you a great deal of comfort. But information is power. Information withholds power. Ultimately, as the board, we're responsible to the constituents as to what's happening with this money. And if we don't have more of an idea of what's happening, how do we make good decisions?
How does this
we
tell you?
rely on you right now.
But how does this tell you what's happening?
This is a nice start. I would really want more information for me to have a comfort level. But I'm comfortable reading financial statements. Somebody who's not comfortable reading financial statements, they get a stack of paper with numbers on it, and they look at it and go, yeah, I don't get it. And they'd walk away from it, and they wouldn't get anything from it. So I think with Linda, I met with you, what we're trying to do is get not the financial report this thick, but we're trying to get a little more information, something that gives us some comfort. Yes, does this bring about questions? Yeah, I looked at it and I said, district operations insurance. July was 201 this year, and last year was 105. Wow, I wonder why it was so different, because insurance is something that you pay monthly, quarterly, whatever, and it's pretty consistent. So why did our insurance go up? It does raise those kinds of questions, but not that I'd necessarily ask it at the meeting. I might write you a note and say, what happened? And I'm sure you know, right off the top of your head, you could give it to us, but I'm sure our insurance didn't double or half.
No, and you see that at the end of the year with the total financials for the year where we came out. So you do have that information at that point. And when we talked, you mentioned wanting something to demonstrate where we were or to hang your hat on or something like that. And to me, having a statement from me who works with it all the time saying that, we're on track financially, we will be under budget this year, should give you that kind of comfort, because that's my job to work with that. And it's the board's job to be at that 20,000-foot level reviewing. But I think if we go, if we're always looking at, well, last year and what were we doing last year, it's just a lot of questions that don't really get us anywhere, because things change year to year. It's not the same. And yeah, I can go back and I can answer them. Some of them might be off the top of my head, but some of them might not. I might have to ask the staff to go through, why? What is it that's different from this month this year and this month last year? And to me, that isn't useful information. It's a waste of our resources.
How often would you be looking at getting a report like this?
Linda was saying quarterly, that I would live with that. That would be fine.
This
At least
is not,
something.
this is not new information. This is the same information Jim gives. I just looked up last year, put it next to each other, made a comparison. There's not any additional information here. It's just providing context. It's not a lower level of detail. It's the same level of detail that you currently provide. It focuses on the general fund. You provide special education, and you provide revenues that I don't think that's useful. No one looks at this. It tells us where the dollars are being spent. I guess to say that if we have questions that we need to avoid questions, our students are expected to ask questions and be curious and know how things are put together, and we seem to be afraid of that. And given the current technology and financial systems, Jim, I'm sure you can drill down in any one of these categories to quickly answer any question that may come up. I just don't see it as difficult.
That's not correct.
We invested a lot of
You
money
don't
in
just double-click on one of these and it tells you what's in them. They're not to that level. That would be nice, but we don't have that. And I'm not trying to hide something. This is information that you have.
And I'm not trying to, find something or expose something or make somebody look bad. I just think we need to build our skills in looking at financial information to know where the flexibility is as we, make changes or connect resources to priorities. It's not a bad thing. You can learn to get comfortable with this information.
But that's the job of the administration,
I
to
think
connect
every board
priorities
member,
with
every
dollars.
board member should be able to understand this kind of information at this level. I mean, when you think about, best practices and what's out there, what if we applied the same curriculum review that Wendy brings to her subject, to the financial review of our operations? There's a lot out there in what best practices are and what the public expects. There's a lot of changes going on there, and we can, put our head in the sand and say, we don't have to change anything. Or maybe we can be proactive and we can lead. We pride ourselves in leading districts and how we do things. This could be an area that we could lead also in providing greater understanding and information. This is not a level of detail that we don't already have. So I don't understand this micromanage concept. It's not more detailed information. It's the same information in different contexts.
And then once you have this, then what are you going to do with it?
Make intelligent decisions.
But we've already
Already
approved
made
the
the
budget,
decision.
right? We've already approved the budget that this is coming from. We have the district administrator and Mr. Milzer work together to decide, you know, how to spend that money, or how to distribute the money, or how to shift the money around when we need to do that. I'm trying to understand what Mrs. Witkowski wants to do with this once she has this. That's what I'm asking. Where is the relevance in having this?
We have a report now. Are you suggesting we
And
don't
that's
need
not
that?
good enough, and that one isn't good enough? Is that what you're saying? I'm just asking. I'm not sure.
I think this will add to what we have now.
And then, when it adds to it, then what are you gonna do with it?
What do
though?
we do with it
I'm
now?
worried that, number one, that we're gonna turn into micromanagers, and number two, you're gonna start, not you specific, but I'm talking about you as a group, all of us here, and then we're gonna start asking for another report and another report, and we're taking away from the things that Mr. Milzer or Dr. Miller or Dr. Zelmer should actually be doing, but we're saying, oh, look at this one little thing, it's out of place, and now I want a whole report on that. I'm just worried to do that. I'm worried that the really important
That we might
things
know
are
something?
gonna-
Is that what you're worried about?
Pardon, no, well, that's, no. I find that to be very insulting, too. But, I'm just trying to understand what it is that you're looking for. That's all I'm asking.
Mr. Milzer, what program would you use to create this?
I created it.
Well, I mean, if it transfers over to Mr. Milzer, you're not gonna create it every month.
I could.
That's not your job. That is not your job. Now you have entered into micromanagement. That is not your job to create that report.
To volunteer to help is micromanagement?
No,
No,
that is,
a
no,
board
that's
would-
not, no,
okay.
that is not Mrs. Witkowski's job. That is why we pay Mr. Milzer a very good salary, to do that job. That is not Mrs. Witkowski's job.
Okay, Mr. Milzer, what program would you use to create this? Because a board does not take over the function of, it would not be the board's function to do that.
I would have to see if we could get it out of our financial program, otherwise I would have to transfer the information to Excel and kind of recreate this bottom section.
So then you're using your time to recreate another report. Yes?
True.
It's copy and paste into Excel.
It's using time. And is Mr. Milzer then using his time wisely?
I still want to reiterate, for those of you that have been in national conferences and heard talks on school board duties and responsibilities, this does not fall under the duties and responsibilities of the school board. It's the responsibilities of our business office and our administration. The budget has been adopted. The daily operations and the monitoring of anything that goes on in this district belongs to the administration, not to the school board. The school board hires us to do a job. We do that job. We do it well. There's never been any question from anybody. The community doesn't knock on our door for any of these questions or answers that I'm aware of. Mr. Alexandrovich, you said it creates power. Power for what?
Knowledge is power.
Well, knowledge is power, but I'm saying, what do you need that power for? And that's a rhetorical question, I'm just asking myself. But I strongly make the statement that this is dipping into the administrative duties and responsibilities, and I think it's not appropriate for, well, I'll stop right there. I think Mr. Milzer and I are on the same page, and I think districts that all school districts operate in a very similar manner. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Hamilton School District, their president, Gabe Colasari, stood right here and said the responsibility of the operations of a school district belongs with the administration. And those of you that were on the board at that time heard him say it. And he says it to this day, and he still serves, I believe, on the CISA board, so.
Are we saying that reviewing information is running the district? Reviewing information?
I'm simply saying that you creating this document to begin with and saying that now you would like Jim to follow and do it goes back to, and then to volunteer to make that report, I think speaks volumes that you want to be connected to this particular, because of your profession. You also heard when we had the WSB representative and a WISA representative, when you have a profession in terms of finances, that doesn't mean it translates to the school district. That's your occupation, but it's not the occupation that you come in to a school board in an environment of a school district and say, okay, now I know because I'm a financial person, we'll take care of the budget and operations. That's our job. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not suggesting that I would do this. I'm just suggesting that the board would have better information, as Alan has said. It's about information.
I don't think the monthly cash flow information is important for me to make decisions as a board member. I think comparing it on an annual basis, which is, we budget on an annual basis, we review it on an annual basis. We do keep a little bit of an eye on the cash flows with the check register, but it's not terribly useful. But I think that is an appropriate level of detail. You know, these categories, that same level of detail, and then an annual level, I think that's what our job is. I think monitoring it on a month-to-month cash flow kind of basis like this is an operational task. Excuse my
I
voice.
guess I'm confused. Are you saying that the cash report that we've been reviewing since the beginning of whatever is not useful and should be discontinued?
It's interesting information, but it doesn't necessarily inform any decisions that I make
And
at this
but
table.
we've read this into the minutes. We've been doing this. We've been going through these motions every month. Since when, Jim?
Long time.
It's been 4 or 5 years that we've done this report, I think.
What about the cash flow report?
Cash flow, the treasurer's report with the balances on it. We've done that for as long as I've been here, I think.
And yet you've just said that you don't find that very valuable.
I said it does not inform my decisions on a day-to-day basis.
But I think that was part of a prior discussion. We agreed that that may not be the most useful tool, which is why that's something that's being modified. I don't necessarily want to look at this on a monthly basis. I think it may lend interesting context if we were to get, like we already get the annual budget, if we were to get a semi-annual review, like we normally do, to get something like this at a 6-month juncture. But I wouldn't want to look at this monthly because of the ebbs and flows and how things go. But I think if we were to have, we've talked before about having be more involved in the budget process, but not so much involved, but from a timing standpoint. When do we talk about our capital improvements? When do we talk about some of these other things that get into the budget? So maybe having some type of budget discussion on a semi-annual basis would be something that would be acceptable, like what you guys are looking at here. But I wouldn't be interested in looking at a monthly ebb and flow in the cash and how one thing was paid one month one year but paid a different month another year to try and reconcile the difference.
I think it is our job to oversee the funds of the school district. I see this with the city monthly for every single department, but, it's up to this board if they want to see this kind of thing monthly. I don't know why school districts do this differently. I don't know why, but it is not the job of the board to do this. We are not hired. If Mr. Milzer is going to do something like this, he has to be able to do it on a program we have. And of course, it has to be a board decision. So would I find this valuable? Quarterly or 3 times a year? I suppose, yes. I'm not opposed to seeing these numbers.
And just to be clear, the top piece of the sheet is what you get monthly, and we're not talking about doing away with that. That would continue. It's really only the addition of the bottom piece
Just the
of the sheet.
variances from year to year,
Right,
which to me raises more questions.
right,
And
exactly.
I don't know. Like he said, the whole insurance thing, why is it almost half as much as it was last year? And
But, you know, that's a good example, because the whole insurance thing, why is it different from year to year? What relevance would the board have to know that? And I know it's information, I get that. But that's for Jim to say, why did this change, when he talks to our vendors and say, why did it go up? Or chances are it's just because of it's a billing date that we do differently every year, could be. But that's an operational thing.
But if our insurance doubled in cost, shouldn't the board know that?
But I think, Alan, when you approve the budget, we bring the insurance costs, like, for example, what our health insurance, our dental insurance will be to you, so we know what that figure will be, and we'll know what that increase is. But now, if we, let's say it was $1 million, but now over the course of the year, if on let's say we pay it quarterly, and one quarter was higher than the other quarter, there might be a reason for that, some people dropped off the insurance, or some retirees, you know, that kind of thing might have been the reason for that, anything? Yeah.
Right, you'd get the insurance information as part of the budget presentation before you're approving it. You know, here's what's happening with our insurance this year. You know, expect it to go up this amount, or whatever it would be. That we talk about as part of the budget process. This is just payments being different. And in that case, that was exactly what it was. You get payments in 1 month, 1 year, and the next year you don't get the bill until late. It doesn't get paid till the next month.
Would it be fair to say if this would be a wider snapshot in time, the variances wouldn't be as significant? Because you're not talking a month-to-month ebb and flow, but you're talking every 4 months
Actually,
or every 6 months?
When I did this, because this is the beginning of the year, it's, you know, I think this would be more useful personally if it was year-to-date, and then year-to-date the price. So as you build through the year, so a June year-to-date compared to a June year-to-date would be a better comparison than a month-to-month.
If you're
It
not,
would take out some of the month-to-month variances, and a quarterly look at this would be probably,
Well, if that's an interest, what Linda's referring to, if that's an interest of the board members, and I don't know who all's interested, but you did it for your own information, why couldn't that just be the practice? If you want to have that information, you do it, if nobody else is interested in it.
yeah, I mean, I'm going to do it.
Like you
So
said.
It's not like you guys have to see it. I got my spreadsheet set up, I'm doing it, so it's not,
Right, you already did
I
it,
just
so.
want to share it. That's all.
You can share it, but it doesn't have to be, I don't think it has to be, I mean, I like looking at this. This is, but like I said, it raises questions, and it might raise more questions than it's worth. Do you know what I mean?
How do we know?
What do you mean, how do we know?
If it raises more questions than it's worth.
Because it,
How do we
like
know
he,
that?
what did he say? What did Mr. Milzer say?
But you wouldn't know that unless
So
you,
take 2.5 weeks of his time to track down this one payment to make sure the dates were different?
Jim's a professional, he wouldn't be doing that.
It is
I
going
don't
to
think you
take
can
time, and
speak
it
for
will
him
take staff
on
time
that.
What's
to do
that?
that. It will take staff time, and it will take my time to do that. It isn't always obvious why that would be, and I would have to have someone go back and pull all of this to look at it and see what we were paying, and then what we paid in the other one, and try and reconcile, well, what was different and what was was going on at the time that makes that
I'm not asking you to
different.
reconcile, Jim, you know, a general question.
Oh, sure you are. I have to do that to answer the question.
I don't think you should be doing this to ask in-depth questions. I think you should be looking at it and saying, okay, I mean, if there was some way out question, okay, but to do it just to ask questions,
That's what I think is gonna
I
happen,
don't
though.
think that should be the.
I
See,
like
to
looking at it
me,
and
it's
seeing the
not
difference,
that-
but I don't think it should be to have him go track stuff down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna look at this to go ask questions. I'm gonna take it for information.
Would it be worth doing this for 1 year quarterly? So 4 times for this year, and at the end of the year, we look at it again and say, do we want to continue to do this? Do we get anything out of it?
But
And Jim can say, it raised more questions than it's worth.
here's my thing, getting anything out of it, how do you get your answers? You have to go to Jim to get that answer.
Right, and then
Okay.
we've just given him a year of additional work that at the end of that year, we may all say, yeah, we didn't really need this anyhow.
Right.
But he's wasted his time doing that.
well, I was actually thinking the same thing Dr. Pats was, and that is, we have this information already at our disposal. There's nothing magical about Jim putting it together.
Oh, there is. I mean, we were told that Jim is hired to do this, Linda shouldn't be doing it.
No, but my point is,
that's not
we
what
as
I
board
said.
members have this information. So there's
Yeah, so
nothing
it's your
that
choice
says
to do that.
Jim's the guy that has to put this together. So this doesn't have to be a sanctioned and requested board document as much as it could be an individual endeavor to glean these numbers. And if those want to be shared, they can be shared. Doesn't have to be in a formal setting. But my point is, we can still do this. It just doesn't have to be something that's officially from Jim, because we already get these numbers anyway.
And if Linda wants to do it in her free time, that's fine with me. But I don't want Linda to take it upon herself to come to every meeting with this document in hand and then pass it out to us and say, okay, here's my financial report for this month's meeting, and Mr. Moser sits there. That's not what I want. That's not Linda's role. That's what I'm saying. If Linda wants to do it Saturday night in her free time, and that's what she's gonna do, then that's what she's gonna do. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But it is not her place to make this document, bring it to this board meeting, and pass it out to all of us, and then we're all gonna sit around and discuss it. That is not her role. That's what I was saying.
And I really didn't want this to be a discussion about who's doing what. I want it to be a discussion about about the information. You know, not about if I'm doing it or if Jim's doing it, you know. Can we just try it?
That turns into Jim doing it then. So it has given someone another job. That's part of it.
I guess my point is, if someone wants to get this information and compare it month to month, quarter to quarter, they can still do it.
I agree with you, Mr.
And
Nielsen.
questions may still come up. So it doesn't mean you're absolved of questions. I mean, you still may get a question. It depends on how it's put together, you know, so, I mean, if you have a template that's already created, I don't know that we need to make it an official board document. You guys are still gonna be able to get your hands on the information. I will too. And ask questions if we wanna ask questions.
I think we need to move on this, so if someone wants to make a motion, I think they need to make a motion.
Can I suggest we prepare the report, let's say, 6 months will be when, Jim?
In January?
January. The bottom information would just be added, year-to-date January, year-to-date the prior year. It's in January, we take a look at it, it leads into the next budget cycle, and we can see what the information looks like. Just one report in January, in a different way, that Jim would prepare, and if there's questions, I'm sure, you know, he'll look at it also and probably anticipate if there's anything that's significant. You know, already have it all answered, and we just take one look at a report in a different way. I like to make the motion for a January report that adds just one bit of information, which is the year-to-date comparison with the prior year. That's what I like to suggest.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Mrs. Witkowski, second by Mr. Alexandrovich. Any discussion?
We expect our teachers to make changes. I think we have to expect the whole district to make a change, to improve, to continuously improve. We've already heard some members say, we get this cash report and it's not doing anything for me. Okay, well, it means there's a need for improvement. Let's take a step forward. Let's try it.
For clarification, your motion is only on the second sheet of paper that you passed out.
Correct.
Is it possible for you to get this, something created for January?
I would have to see if I can do the 6 month. I know I can do monthly. I'm not sure I can do 6 months. But I mean, I could add them all together and do it that way on a spreadsheet. I guess I would say that I don't think doing it in January, just cutting down the number of times we do it makes any difference. it's still interesting information, kind of like you were saying, Ms. Schleter. It's, oh, and why is that? And that's, I think, the first reaction to it. And I think even the answers don't give you any information that's useful or worth spending the time to even put it together. So,
I would support that, because if you take a look at the Julys and the prior Julys, that gives you no relevant information to formulate a budget. It has no consequences because our fiscal year is different, our funding is different, and so on. So I don't see the value of it.
I would ask the board then, is there any value in the current reports that we get? The one right here. Do we need this?
So, Mr. Milzer, so if we were asking you for a monthly budget report that was broken down with a program that we have right now, we don't have a program that could do that?
now we provide the monthly budget report like it is
Well, I
on
mean,
top.
I mean, something more like this.
Like-
We don't have any program that could do something like this.
Bottom piece?
Yeah.
I could definitely do come up with the July and the previous July, I believe.
Yeah, right here.
And then I'd
Here's
have
July.
to, I'm not sure it would do the math for that. I might have to just import it into a spreadsheet to show the differences and so forth.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please, Mrs. Schleter?
Sure, Mrs. Klein?
No.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
No.
I say no. Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Aye.
4-3.
Motion carries 4-3. Thank you. Okay. Item 8C, financial literacy discussion. Mr. Nielsen?
We have one of our fire teachers in here to do one of those drills to get everybody.
Brain break.
What is it?
Brain break.
Bingo, that's it. Brain break,
Do we
everybody.
need a short recess?
No, I was kidding.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
I was just kidding.
Mr. Nielsen, financial literacy?
Thank you. This is just a topic I wanted to bring up for some board discussion. Had a meeting with Mr. Alexandrovich and Wendy and Mike, and we met in the morning, early morning one day, and had some good discussion, and it's on personal financial literacy. And there was a survey that got put out by the state on September 13 about what are districts doing in terms of offering this or requiring it maybe for graduation. And of course, they're all over the board. Some of the banner headlines on that survey was that 44% of the districts in the state require a personal financial literacy course. But as we had a discussion, you drill down into some of how the questions were actually asked, and some of those numbers could kind of go all over the place. But I have to be honest, I was originally coming in at this as I would like to have the board consider maybe having this a requirement for graduation. That was really where I was kind of coming in at. And when we had the discussion about removing the economics class as a requirement, which passed, and I did vote to do that, I always kind of had it in the back of my mind if that was really the right thing to do. So, but with that being said, and going through and learning a little bit from Wendy and Mike how programs are brought to the district and what becomes a requirement and what doesn't, I understand it's going to be a process, you know. But then we started having other discussions about, well, maybe this is something that we can more, you know, weave into the DNA, if you will, of a Franklin High School graduate. And this isn't, you know, something that that is just what I would want. It would be what does the board want to direct and what kind of direction we want to take in the district. So there was a lot of different things that came about. Mike became aware, or made me aware of a reality day, which right now I believe is available or offered to business students.
Business students, yeah, not even all of those classes. It's about 7 different different sections of classes that participate.
And that's in their junior year or something?
The
Or can be all
classes
of
are
them?
mixed with multiple grades.
Okay. So, but anyway, it gives them an idea of, you kind of go through a day in the life of your personal finances. And you could certainly talk about it, but does everybody know what that is? Or maybe just give a, yeah, anybody, you guys know what reality day is or no? You know what I mean?
You have to,
Yeah.
it's like
I
playing a
was
game
there
of life,
one time.
It's
right?
like playing a big game of life, exactly right. And Mike was saying he was Fate, and you have to come and see Fate twice, and one might be a $500 inheritance, and one might be a $2,000 roof repair. But it gives people an idea of, you know, what it's really like out there in that regard. And so some of the things that were talked about, this personal financial literacy class, it's in the business section of the course book on page 46, that I would venture to guess there may be a fair number of students and or parents that don't even know this class is available. And I think this may be something that we might want to highlight it if it's something that you know, the board wishes to do, and give it, market it a little bit better. That was the term that you used. So we could do it where this reality day wouldn't be just, let me back up just a minute. This is something where I do feel strongly about, that it's not something that's just for business students. It's not just for math people. It's for everybody. Whether you're a musician, going into the arts or whatever, you need to have some, in my opinion, some proficiency level, basic understanding of personal finance. You know, a little bit of how the markets work. Ellen made the comment, you buy a pair of shoes for $50 and all you do is make that minimum payment on your credit card, that now is going to cost you $150. So instilling those types of values, and not values, but information into the students. So that's kind of where we came in talking at that level. And so some of the other notes that I had here where having the idea of personal financial literacy integrated into our overall focus on a student's college and career readiness, in that all FHS graduates attain a certain standard of proficiency regarding their own personal finances. Is this something that district thinks we should put an emphasis in? And if we do, to what level? And is it necessarily just requiring somebody to take a semester class? Is that really going to be the best way to get this information to them? Or is it more of, because the argument with the economics class was we don't need to have a class because the information that comes in the economics class they're getting from all these other areas, and they can weave it into everyday or real-life examples. Well, maybe this is something that personal financial literacy could take on that type of angle as well, starting at maybe even in the middle school. This allows us to have this discussion in the realm of standards and create target proficiency levels we feel comfortable with. So while the class of personal financial literacy may or may not become a requirement, we could set a target that every student will achieve a level of personal financial literacy proficiency, raising the bar for everyone, which kind of dovetails into our whole discussion last semester and last year about grading for standards for grading. So that's kind of where we're coming from. I wanted to kind of tee that up at a board level. What do you think about this? What are your thoughts on what we're doing now in the district and what you'd like to see down the road for our graduates? And if Wendy and Mike want to add anything to what we had in our conversation.
I think it's a great idea. I made my son take the course this year, because I don't want him going to college and getting 8 credit cards and going nuts.
Did he take it this year?
Taking it right now.
Oh, okay, so, okay.
I've heard several compliments about the class, that it's a great class. And I was wondering, is it possible to offer something like that for summer school also?
Sure, you could put anything into summer school, as long as you can get a teacher to teach it. That's usually sometimes a holdup of summer school offerings.
You had some interesting numbers on the actual number of people that took the class that graduated last year. You want to share that with the board?
Yeah, right. We pulled the numbers to find out how many students from last year's graduating class took personal finance sometime during their four years. And it was 38%. There were 365 graduates and 159.
139.
139?
Yeah.
Thank you. And, but like Tim pointed out, only a small number of them took it as seniors. and that may be a year where it's more, maybe more useful to you than when you're a freshman, but there's like 21 seniors.
Yeah, 44 is freshman, 39 is sophomore, 36 is junior, and 21 is senior.
Yeah.
So my son said it's a freshman class. He's like one of the only seniors in that class.
Yeah, which, hey, I think it's great that they took it, but I would argue that if their class load permits, someone who's 17 going on 18 is gonna get more, may get more, I think they would get more out of a class like that than someone who's 14 going on 15. But, but I wouldn't want to pigeonhole that class to be taken at a certain time. I just thought it was interesting the way the numbers.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
what we shared too was, we don't, that class did go through review when the whole career and tech ed area went through review, and the group working on that felt it was an important course to maintain, but never was it talked about being required. And then we also pointed out to Tim and Alan that we only require what's mandated by statute, and the electives, we keep electives. So once you start making that decision to require electives, you could have a boardroom full with everybody with what they're recommending. And we explained to Tim and Alan, it's important for us to have a process to fall back on so that we can determine, because we don't want our curriculum to become everybody's agenda. We need to offer what's required because it's mandated, and then provide a plethora of courses we feel are valuable to our students. And Tim and Alan understood that you have to have some type of a process. And so we came up with that, because we don't dispute that personal finance isn't important for anybody either, but can you do it in a way that isn't invasive to the mandates or the requirements, forcing a student to take something that a family may not value as much as us, and we're imposing that on them. But can we do a better job of advertising? Can we do a reality day and hand out a flyer and say, if you think this is valuable, or parents, if you think this was valuable, we do offer this course. Because Tim pointed out to me multiple times during the meeting, I kept referring to it as a business course, only because it falls under business, but it's really not a business course. It's a course to assist you in being career and college ready that's not tracked really in one area. It just falls under there because it's taught by a business ed teacher. So that's how it got its place.
So if, one of the things that came out of here in Common Ground was if we were to highlight this class more, not require it necessarily right out of the blocks, that may not be the best way to go about it, but certainly if we make everyone aware of it more, we may have more people take it and not have it sit on page 46 in a page, that people aren't even finding page 46 if that's not something that they're interested in. And not only just try and get to the students, but also get to the parents and let them know that, hey, this is something that's available, and you made a point to say that, and you can educate your kid in this area for free, because it's public education. So now so I think just make them aware. I mean, there are so many choices at the high school. That the course book looked like the Whitewater book when I went to college, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But this is why I just wanted to have a kind of more of a board discussion, a philosophical discussion of how would we want to get this involved more in our curriculum? Do we want to get this involved more in our curriculum? And what's the best way to go about it? You talked about not requiring classes that aren't not mandating classes for requirement that aren't required by the state, but yet our economics class fell into that realm for a long time.
Right.
And
But
so
what I explained there was, when social studies were required to have the students take 3 social studies credits, or 3 science credits, or 4 math, or whatever, then the department looks at what they're offering and decides which of those are required within there. So it technically is a statute requirement. The local control comes from which of that group of social studies courses will be required. And so they do make the decision there, but there's no requirement about business courses, so there's like not a place to put that for them to choose that. So that's the difference.
What's the state requirement on the health class? Or is there a state requirement on health?
Yes. They have to take health, they have to take a semester of health between their 8th grade and senior year. So if you offered it in 8th grade, they wouldn't have to take it all at high school. we choose to, when the FIED department reviewed it, they felt it's valuable that a student needs that information during their high school career and not in they would like it in 8th grade and their high school career, but because we have staffing to do it once, we choose to offer it in their high school year, junior or senior.
Was this kind of like a similar type of class? Something, personal, and it's
Right.
information that we think
Right.
an adult, to be, like you said, career-ready, but need this information. And that's its own category. It's the only class like that.
Right,
In
and
terms
health
of
is
required
state
class.
Required
statute.
by the state.
By the state.
Right.
And they're probably talking about making this a requirement also.
Yeah, I don't know where this whole survey was going or what this whole thing is. There's one part in here that I failed to mention, and that they have multiple pages in here of grants that were awarded, and which isn't, maybe we would qualify, maybe we wouldn't, I don't know, but there is some emphasis coming out of the state, some chatter coming out of the state, and we like to be a district that's in the forefront, in a lot of different areas, and so I thought this would dovetail perfectly into some of the things we're hearing about what's coming out of Madison and how we could keep this district in the forefront.
Yeah, it's been coming out of Madison for probably 20 years on and off. And it gets to, it's even got to legislative committee level, but it's never made it out of committee to go to a vote. There's just something about it. And and that's why some districts are picking it up locally to try to put together some form of, having this available for kids. And I don't think it's, this time around, I don't think it's unrelated to the recession. Just people in debt and that whole thing.
Steve, I'm curious to know what your thoughts would be about this reality day if we were to have that at the sophomore level. And one of the reasons that, and Wendy actually suggested this, if it was at a sophomore level, and they did express interest in maybe taking that PFL class, they would have 2 years to try and find some time to schedule it. Or just maybe just in the overall philosophical scheme, where are you on this?
Actually, I believe it, and I've mentioned to people here, I think it belongs in the middle school. I think kids are starting to earn money, and parents are charging kids with the responsibility of having money, and I think that is the beginning of, and part of this has to be parent responsibility too. I mean, the school shouldn't be taking this whole thing on. But I think there are just too many opportunities for kids to get in an environment where, okay, if I have this money or I make this money, now what do I do with it? Or what happens if I do a certain thing with it? And I think that reality's got to start a lot younger than high school. I think the high school program is good. I think it should be expanded where a lot of kids have to go through it. I think senior year is way too late. Those kids are working when they're sophomores and they're, getting paychecks and so on. But I think that day is a real wake-up call. When you walk in with, I think it's $1,500 they give you to start with. And I remember last year, there was a kid through there, and 2 stations, and he was out of money. And he didn't have a place to live yet, he didn't know how he was gonna get to work, I don't think he had a job. But I mean, that kind of stuff is important. I think there's more value in a reality concept, to be honest with you, than the class. Because I think the class, as it's taught through the other areas, they'll pick up, okay, how do I, what's a savings account and checking account and all those kind of things. The reality is what do I do when I have this money? What do I do when I don't have it? And what are the consequences for all of it? And I think that needs to start in the middle school. And matter of fact, I was going to talk to Chris today after our principals meeting. But I think, an ideal place for that is 8th grade. And just get them thinking about that summer when they're going into high school, because a lot of those kids as freshmen get jobs someplace, cutting grass on a farm, whatever it might be. And it's got to be scaled down from what you do in high school, obviously. But I think it can have a lot of relevance there and have at least a positive impact when they go a little bit further. But I think if sophomore year, to me, is where I think it needs to happen. So maybe sophomore and junior, one each year.
They have BizTown, JA BizTown, 5th grade, and it goes up to 8th grade, where you go for 6 hours, and you have a job, and you have a checking account or a savings account, and you do the banking, and the kids are actually the tellers, and the kids are actually the retailers and, the employees. So it's, you have different.
That right now is, we're trying to work that to have that be a required unit in our social studies, but it's very labor intensive, so the schools are struggling to get the volunteers to make it happen. So we were all set to say, let's everybody require it, and they said,
you can't make us, because what happens if we can't get 27 volunteers? So that's a goal, but it is labor intensive, so they're trying to figure that
Well,
out.
to volunteer, you have to go to Menominee Falls for a couple hours and
Right.
actually do the training.
Right.
So how would that look at the, again, conceptually in the 8th grade? You're not talking a class, just instill
event.
these ideas woven throughout?
An event.
An
Well,
event?
As far as
Oh,
what is
okay.
taught,
Reality check.
curricularly, we cover different things at a real lower level, in math, and there might be reference to percentages and checking accounts, whatever. I'm talking about, okay, 8th graders, where it's, it's portrayed that you have a job and you have money. You walk in the door, Tim, here's $1,000 that you get every single month, okay? But now you're living at home, okay, but your mom and dad are making you pay for your own shoes, for your own whatever. Well, when you want these Nike shoes, those are $250, okay? All right, give me that $250. And then, you wanted a moped, your dad has a cab, you wanna go up to the moped. Okay, that's gonna cost you $400 a month. And then, and just the reality of, I get to a point, I don't have any money. But why did I get those? Getting them to think about what they purchased and why, or how they spent their money, maybe is a better term.
I think,
Because-
yeah, it'd be like a middle school reality day, like high
Exactly,
school.
but scaled down.
Yeah.
But
And
with them, it's more of, when you run out of money, you don't get any more. Because too many kids around here, you run out of money, here's some more. And they don't have an appreciation for it. And I think we have to create an environment where there needs to be an appreciation and a responsibility for money to be able to say, when I'm out, I'm out. And I can't, and, oh, by the way, if you borrow it, like somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Alan, the shoe story. Okay, I'm gonna buy these $50 shoes, but I'm gonna put it on my credit card. And then, geez, why do I pay that interest every month? Do they even know what interest is? Most kids, I think, have an idea what it is.
Well, and you had mentioned the concept of compounding interest. That's great when you get it in an abstract math class that really doesn't mean anything to you, but when you talk about if I save a little bit out of my check every month, you mean to tell me that at the end of 20 years and 30 years and 40 years, I'm gonna have how much left? Not that an 8th grader's thinking about retirement, because they're not, but you can tie that into a real-world application. I think that's the big picture. So I would welcome and love to see, whatever emphasis we can put in this area. And again, coming from the standpoint of, hey, I think everyone should take PFL. Well, that may not be that probably not the best way to go about it, but if it's more, they get it in 8th grade, they get the realities as a sophomore, I think that's something that really could have an impact on when we send these kids out the door. If our mantra is gonna be college and career ready, this is something that's right there.
Another part of the high school reality day, the way it's run, is that it's not just that day. The students need to research a career, find out how much it pays, what the education is going to cost them to get into that career. And then they head into the reality day with their checkbooks. We'd like to go to check cards at some point and modernize it, but they go in with the checkbooks, and they have to do, kind of like Steve was talking about, they have to figure out what kind of transportation they're going to have. And then they see the cost. Am I going to rent? Am I going to buy? Am I going to lease? Am I going to get new or used? And you start to say, well, I can't do what I thought I maybe was going to be able to, what I thought I was going to be able to do. And the same thing with housing and insurance and unexpected things through fate. There's dog groomers, and then you see kids get in trouble, and they have financial planners to go to. There's a bank, and the financial planner will advise them on how they can get out of the hole that they're in. And you see kids who feel, I think it's important they have an emotional response to that, to not having money, or an emotional response to having it, and feeling satisfied that, hey, I can manage, I'm seeing how I'm managing this, and I'm seeing some of my friends that are struggling with it. It's pretty powerful.
And I think my request would be is we go back to the business group, not that it's a business course, Tim, but I think those are the teachers who can actualize a middle school reality day and a high school reality day, because it does have to have a little more meat than just the one day. You've got to come in with the career and the ideas, so someone has to help us own it, and that's the group that, given the charge, can figure out how to do it and then figure out a timeline. I think if we went to the high school right now and said, you've got to do an all sophomore reality day, I think they would have a nervous breakdown based on where they're at because of the change. Yeah, so I think that would be my request, is let's go back to the business department will be thrilled to death that we're featuring what they value, and they
I think we'll own it and come up with good ideas. Aaron Schwantes, the middle school business guy, is a very progressive guy, works well with the high school group, and so I think they probably will come up with something better than we could, because it's kind of their thing, so.
I'll tell you a quick little story. In my neighbor, whenever I see a Kool-Aid stand, I always stop, pull over for kids, give them money, whatever. And I got this little gang in my neighborhood, none of them are over fourth grade, and I got two little bugs about 4 years old. And so I bought Kool-Aid the first time, and they got the red Solo cups. And so I pulled up and said, "How much is your lemonade?" $1. I was used to paying $0.25, but I thought, okay, humor the kids, so I gave them $1. And so I was talking, and I said, "Now, can I give you a tip?" And they all looked at me like, "What?" And I said, "A tip means I get to give you more money." And the one kid says, "Does that mean I have to give you more?" And it was one of the little kids. So this was about probably a month later, just 2 weeks ago. I went by there again, I pulled up, and they said, "Can we just have the tip without giving you any?" And I said, "No, I want to buy some Kool-Aid." So they gave me a red Solo cup, and he put about that much in the bottom. And there was a girl in fourth grade, about fourth grader, she is a fourth grader, Ben Franklin, she had the pitcher of Kool-Aid, and there was a bunch in there. And I looked at it like that, and the little kid says, "Should I give him more?" And she said, "No, we can make more if we sell it to somebody else." And these are little bitty kids. And so I tipped them again. Then one little kid says, "Can you give us some more tips?" They got me pegged as a sucker, but that's okay. But my point is they were asking questions that kids like that tell me that, okay, they figured out what a tip was. They figured out if I give them more, I'll get more, or maybe I won't get more. So these are little farts.
Discussion, I wanted to bring it forward, and something, and Wendy, and what you had shared in your email is that, bring some ideas to the high school and determine what's doable and the timeliness of doable items, and like you just mentioned. And so I think this is great. I just wanted to bring it forward, get some board feedback, and see, what may come of it. So if we could have, maybe we'll put this back up on the agenda and get an update on what we're looking at. And
Speaking of featured, is there any way that we can, with a blog, we have the blog at the high school and newsletter, can we feature any of our classes like this class? And any, you talked about the handbook, any of the classes that aren't known as well?
We always leave it up to the department, and we're a little bit careful in that we don't want them, if you're a better marketer, we don't want a bunch of students taking courses because a department markets better than the other. So you've got to think of a way so that students make the right choice and they're not enticed by the marketing. Because initially out of the gate, we started that, and we had one department that had a bazillion kids, and not that it wasn't great that they all signed up for that area, but was it really what they needed to be career and college ready? So I think this is one of those areas where you market it like you would a health course, like this will assist you personally. So I think it's a good idea, but again, we'll go back to the business department and let them help us figure out how to do that work.
Are there any standards, though, embedded in like the math curriculum already, or social studies? Are there standards, specific things that are tied to?
Yeah, there are. We have to do a more thorough audit of it, but like Tim mentioned in math, they do address compound interest not only from a mathematical standpoint, but from a personal finance standpoint. In family and consumer sciences, the word consumer is right in there, and they're constantly shopping for things. So they're very understanding of the whole concept of discount and saving dollars and opportunity costs, where if you're not using the money for one, if you're saving the money somewhere, you can use it somewhere else. So it is embedded. We could probably be find out more about how it's all embedded and maybe be more intentional.
I think that design in those reality days needs to be an integrated approach, because that's the future of education. When kids learn everything in silos, they don't make connections. And so, Steve's doing a good job of trying to get them to make connections at the stand, but you have to be overt about that. And so I think when we talk with the group, that's what we'll talk about, an integrated, connected approach. And even though it would be an event, we still would talk about the standards it would address, because I think that's important, that kids see that you did this and it addressed that over there.
And DPI has standards definitions.
I mean, just like you're trying to say that, literacy is everybody's responsibility too. Even though you're a math teacher, you got to worry about literacy.
Right.
Well, even though you're a social studies teacher, you got to worry about personal business. You know,
Right.
there's a way to embed that, again, across those disciplines. So, and when you say the business department should be, you know, do this, well then,
I think they can all do it, but I'd be leery to add standards. They all do have literacy standards now. That's a requirement out of the Common Core, and they've selected standards they're targeting and focusing on and assessing and working around. But there's no requirement to say you have to add those business standards in formally right now, so I think they would struggle to make.
but that'd be
that-
one way you could do that, though, is, like you said, find a
Right,
personal
it's more-
finance standard and embed that in your class. You could do it that way. Instead of having a class, you embed the,
And that's the way our kids are gonna learn to connect the dots as we go through this and get further and further beyond this grading for learning and standards-based grading. They're gonna know, okay, you're teaching me this because I'm supposed to learn, because that's what I'm supposed to, learn the standards, so, yeah.
And the why and the how.
And the
where to
why and the
apply
how.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, why is this important? Right.
Right, processes.
Thank you for bringing this to the board.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, we'll move on to Dr. Zomer and the assessment report.
Yes, got a couple of quick things, and I think it's a happy way to have the final agenda. I think this is the final agenda item. The two things, ACT and our state report cards. And then we also put a small report in here about goals that came out of our summer data retreat. But very positive on both the ACT and the state report cards. And if you didn't see already, there's been a press release, and it may be in the paper this week, maybe tomorrow morning, something about our ACT scores tying our previous high. And our ACT scores are kind of like the stock market, they go up and down, but we're going up and down at a higher level now than we were going up and down at previously. And so that's a good thing. We have also, the report shows that our percentages of career readiness, college readiness, in all of our subject areas is well above the state. And so we have a pretty positive report on ACT. Should know that, you might remember this from the assessment report, that ACT tests are going to be required for all juniors starting this year. And it's easy to think about, John Rashi, the newspaper reporter, asked me this. He said, do you anticipate that your ACT composite will go down? And generally speaking, that does happen when you include more kids in a test like this. They tend to drop off. One thing is that everybody in the district, everybody in the state is going to be in the same boat. And the other thing is that you remember from our AP report that we included hundreds of more kids in AP courses in the last few years, but our pass rate went up. So we don't know what will happen with ACT, by including more kids. So we'll be watching that. This is very positive ACT results. And then on the school report card, all the 6 out of 7 schools went up in their scores, and this is, I think, something to be proud of, because these scores are not just test results. They're test results, but they're also closing the gap calculations, they're growth calculations, and they're staying on track to graduation calculations. And all those things come together to make the accountability score. And 2 of our schools improved enough in their accountability score to actually move up in the accountability rating. And one of those is the high school that is now rated at the top level and significantly exceeds expectations. And even greater growth was shown over at Country Dale, where they not just are meeting expectations like it was last year, they're at the level of exceeding expectations. They grew over like I think they grew like 5.5 points, which is really a lot and hard to do in the mix of all of those calculations. So kudos to them. In addition to that, I'm going to ask Wendy to talk about another recognition that related to this that Country Dale is experiencing.
I guess, every year we talk about Title I funds through our ESCA grants, and Countrydale is one of the targeted title schools, and they received an award of distinction. Dr. Pats was notified a few weeks ago, and again, another honor that's difficult to receive because you have to, the growth has to be a certain amount of growth to receive that award. We've been a title school for a long time. We've grown a little every year, but never to the capacity to receive the award. So that's really hats off to a staff who really did targeted strategic work to personalize learning for all students.
And the last part,
Just quick, so,
sorry.
was that, do they do RTI differently in that school than other schools, or is it the
No,
same
all
program?
the schools have the same process.
I-time, if they,
They have an I-time, and they use their RTI meetings to determine interventions and extensions for students.
so all schools do it the same?
All schools do it the same.
then the last report in there about district and school student learning objectives is just an awareness piece for the board that we do this internally. Each school has its own goal that's driven by data as a result of a study that a team from each school does. And for the first year, we have, and this is part of, it's tied to educator effectiveness, and we use their language. SLOs comes out of educator effectiveness language. And we have a district goal. And the district goal is to increase our accountability score on the district report card by 2 points. And if we did that for this next year and the year after and the year after, then the district would be at a significantly exceeds expectations level. So,
Well, I think we can be really proud of our schools, and it's something to be able to talk about, to go out in
Right.
public and talk about, so.
Are these, the Countrydale Award and some of these other findings up on the website and highlighted and flashing
Yeah,
and
where was,
yeah.
everything?
I'm not sure, Megan
yes.
did a press release, right, on both the ACT scores and on Countrydale's award.
And then Countrydale is invited to, and Steve helped me, they are invited to Madison to accept that award from the state superintendent. And
Right.
We'll send a team down there to receive that, and then we'll also be putting a banner out in front of the school designated it, so.
Cool.
'Cause it's a lot. to
And
be
I
proud of.
think, along with those recognitions, our middle school earned a distinction award for their RTI practices. They have a banner hanging in their building, and the RTI Center for the state is visiting our middle school, I think on the 26th of September, to understand what those practices are.
I would just like to say, I attended the teacher, isn't the orientation, like the back to school, it was on that Wednesday, what is that called, the host?
Back to school night?
No, not back to school.
With
day.
the staff?
Yeah, with staff.
Oh, welcome back.
Welcome, yeah, so Janet and I were there on that Wednesday, and Steve did a great job. He talked about these standards, and he had all the staff for that school stand up, and then he told them what their rating was, and how they they exceeded expectations, and they clapped, and there was cheering, and everyone was generally excited. And then, and it got to the point where they started applauding when the group stood up. And then they got to that last group, and he says, "No, hold your applause on this one, because I want to get through this." And I believe that was for the high school, that significantly exceeded. And it was neat, it was a great event, it was a nice speech, and there's a lot of excitement from the staff. And I had never been to one of those before, and it was just different for me to see all that, and it was good, it was great.
It really gave a great start to the school year.
Sure
I
did.
think that whole assembly, and then we talked about it at the admin meeting today about how positive it was all around the district.
so this goal for 2 points versus last year, I mean, because you only went up like 1 point this year, it seems pretty ambitious.
It
Do you have a
does.
plan for that, or do you?
Well, it's not pulled out of thin air exactly.
Yeah.
If you added up how much we increased this year for all the schools,
Mm-hmm.
even taking the minus out for the one that didn't, it's about 2 points.
On average, okay.
If the average would be about 2 points. So if each school is contributing, and if each teacher in each school is contributing, and that's the SLO concept, teacher, school, district.
Is there any other discussion or questions? Thank you very much. Oh, did you have
I
something?
was just gonna say, you guys should all feel proud of all the work that you do. I know you put in a ton of time and a ton of hours, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10, board meeting debriefing. Are there any comments? Okay, hearing none. Future agenda items. We have none on the agenda. Dr. Katz, do you have anything? I'm sure we'll have some.
Well, we will, excuse me, we'll, at the next meeting, Megan has already got it, it's in a draft form right now. We'll present the board with a calendar, which will be a draft probably throughout the year, because it will be changed, of all the reports that we'll give throughout the year, what the dates on, and so on and so forth, so you have an idea when they're coming.
That's what I was just going to say, because we talked about that, yeah. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:50.